I want to welcome you to the Charly Crawford podcast. Let's ride.
This episode is brought to you by Ambrook. Running a ranch today means managing far more than cows. You're balancing multiple enterprises, family partners, land bases, leases, inventory, equipment, and markets that move fast. But if your books and inventories live in the checkbook, spreadsheets, or buried inside QuickBooks, you're always reacting instead of steering the business. Ambrook gives ranchers real managerial insight, not just bookkeeping. See profitability by enterprise or location. Know whether hay is paying for itself, whether stockers outperform cow-calf this year, or whether that rented pasture is worth keeping. Your balance sheet updates automatically, and with ag-specific inventory management, you always know exactly what feed, inputs, and livestocks you have on hand and what they're costing you. Tag receipts from the feed store, reconcile from the tractor, and eliminate year-end scramble. Ranchers save up to 90% of bookkeeping time and finally get numbers they can trust for family meetings, lenders, and major expansion decisions. Ambrook is built for ranching complexity, not generic small business accounting. Try it free for a month at ambrook.com/Crawford. That's AMBROOK.com/Crawford. Hello, Jetson. How you been, cowboy?
Charlie, I've been good. I've been doing really good.
Man, it's good seeing you. How has everything been up there at home?
It's been good. We're, right in the middle of quite a drought, but a lot of people are. We haven't had 2 or 3 snows that have amounted to 7 inches of snow. You know, it's real dry. It's starting to green up and stuff, and they're calling for snow this weekend. Of course, the college rodeo's in town, so you could about bank on it.
Yeah, I've heard it's been dry up there.
It has, real bad.
Yeah, I get that all the time. Everyone's, man, Chuck, what have you been up to? And like, man, I'm watching all these reels on social media of guys out there doctoring wheat pasture cattle, just getting to freaking live the life and being a cowboy, and watching 2-9, guys being 2-9 on social media where guys are just blitzing steers at the rodeos, and then watching guys like Joseph Harrison on there just melting one heel horse down there and just annihilating a set of feet with a sucker in his mouth. And it's like, well, yeah, I got a number 3 to catch the dummy 3 times the other day. Like
right.
What I've got going on is not that exciting.
Me too. When you quit rodeo, though, how do you match that? I mean, the crowds, the adrenaline, winning or losing, it doesn't matter. And then all of a sudden, that's me. One day you're just on Bates Creek ranching. You know, people are like, I haven't seen you forever. Well, you haven't been to Bates Creek.
Yeah.
It does get a little bit boring.
I tell you what, it's been interesting to watch the futurity world and see the money that's getting put into the futurities and the money those guys are winning. And, you know, when I was watching Joe heel with a sucker in his mouth, I'm like, is that like show points? Because I promise you, if you would have healed on anything that I trained, when that sucker hit his front end and bounced, and you just swallowed that sucker. So maybe it's like, hey, look, this is how easy it is to heal on this horse right here.
Yeah, new level of throw your sucker in the dirt there. I'll tell you what, but really, he's so good. I watch him, and then I visit with Carson and Kellen about him, you know, and geez, what they've got these young horses doing. And you know, years ago, you were riding them, just getting them started at 3 or 4. And now, I mean, 6 years old, they're good enough to rodeo on some of them.
Yeah.
And that Joseph, he makes about all of them look amazing.
Well, between him and Colin and
yes,
all those guys out there, I've always been such a fan of Colin Von on the heel side too, where you've always watched how them horses, you can tell they know their job.
Oh yeah.
He's put them together so good.
Yeah, we were together a lot there at the end, and Colin, even rodeoing, he was patient. You know, he made a good pocket, and he never looked like, geez, he overrode that one. He rushed him too much. And he told me one time, I need a little bit more like you, and you dang sure need to slow down.
Yeah, I think some of them fraternities now are paying 40,000. I thought I heard last week, and this is just all what I read, so I don't have any stats for sure, but I think some of them guys said they walked out of there with 60,000, and I mean
Yeah.
that's for when you're done rodeo, and if you're able to be pretty handy with a horse, that's not a bad gig to still be able to, you develop the craft for
Yeah.
30, 40 years, and to be able to all of a sudden now when the rodeo's done and you're like, now what? Well, if you're good with the horses and you can still heal feet, there's at least an opportunity what you've done your whole life to be able to continue it. So that's pretty cool to where a lot of these guys after rodeos had a career as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's me. I when I got done, I made a few more horses, and you always enjoy working with them. And you take Colin, Joseph, Dakota. Yeah, them guys are able to stay in the game, make a living, and not have to load up their truck and leave every day. And like Colin's daughter's getting older, and that was, the kids were kind of my time. That's when you realize, hey, it's time to slow down, kind of your kids and stuff. And man, them guys get to stay home, stay in the game, and make those good horses. And like you said, it gives guys like you and I something to watch. I mean, I'm watching them all the time, and the good runs. I'm sure there's some terrible runs too, but on my phone, I always see the good ones.
The highlight reel.
The highlight reel, yes.
Well, how's everybody been at home? How's Jameis and the family and the ranch, Judd? How is everybody up there at home?
It's been really good. My brother, he's getting good customers. He's got some really nice cutting horses, and he's all over the place now. He just got back from Fort Worth showing some cutters, and like he's doing really well. And my dad, he's 82 now. He's doing good. I'll say, hey, we're moving to this pasture or something. You want to go, Dad? And he always says, well, you need my help? Well, no, I don't need your help. I was wondering if you want to go. And some days he does, and some days he don't. But for as much as he rode and the life he lived, he's doing really good for 82.
Yeah.
My
Yeah,
mom, she's retired. She's home. It's good around here. I'm really, like you said, you get a little bored from time to time after a life at rodeo, but I'm enjoying it.
I've actually gotten to where that's what I've had so many guys too that'll ask me like, "Do you miss it?" And I'm like, "Man, I miss my buddies." This is what's been fun is being able to get some of my guys on the podcast and some of my buddies on the podcast where a guy still gets to be able to have those conversations and because you don't get a chance to meet as much as we used to. But when it comes to missing it, like once someone showed me the difference between gross and net on your income, for me, it was hard to unsee.
That's a fact. That's a fact. Rube said one time we were visiting, he said same thing. He said, I don't miss rodeo. I miss my buddies. If we could have a rodeo right here in Casper every week, I'd be happy as a clam. But yeah, when I quit rodeoing and, truly did quit, after I got done, I roped with Jake and Santa Jenny and some guys and messed around, but wasn't gone full time. But anyway, I used to average back then, my credit card was 65 to 8,500 a month in the true rodeo season, the winter and then all summer. And then you'd get a credit card bill after I truly quit. You might have 700, 800 on it. And it's like, geez, I can pay this.
It's wild when a guy will
with,
see stack up.
Oh, when I rodeoed, I was roping with Randy and I got a credit card and I carried that sucker till Schwank and I made the finals. And finally, after the first finals, I paid that one off. And what a good feeling. You know what I mean? You're just like, I'm never doing that again. But it's hard to rodeo without one.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And then so you've been, besides ranching, you've been also coaching up there too, haven't you?
Yeah, I just resigned last year from coaching. I took over a guy bought the ranch next to us and he wasn't a cowboy and he stocked it with cows. And anyway, a friend of his said, hey, why don't you see if Jhett would look after them? So I took on those cows and then all of our cows. And it just got to where it was, I was coaching and picking up bucking horses a little bit and ranching, and it got too much. And they had a good deal going. So I resigned from that. But Yeah, I really enjoyed coaching, and they asked me if I'd do it right after I quit rodeo, and I thought, well, that'd give me something else to do. And I didn't know if I'd like it that much, but I was worried it'd be just babysitting. But you get guys going through the program, Charlie, that honestly want to learn and they want to be somebody someday. And it's enjoyable. I enjoyed coaching.
Well, I was talking to Bobby Harris on the podcast, and he'd been doing the same and had a lot of those conversations as well with him on the kids that come in there and, like, let me help you understand here with where you're at and where you need to be if this is where you're wanting to go. Because he
Right.
says, they don't know who I am. They don't even know that I've even had a career. They just think of me as a coach. Their parents knew who I was. But when I'm going to coach them, they're like, well, what do you know? And he's like, well, actually, I know quite a bit about all these
Right.
events. And so, but also talking too about, just, man, you're in such a stage in their life, which we've all been there before, is you're so green when you come out for the first time. You're the one that has to wake yourself up. You're the one that has to make your own bed. You're the one that has to drive you to school. There's so much difference from when some of these kids now. And I think more so now than when you were at that age, because I would say being on a ranch, you were accountable for a lot of your own actions. And so for a lot of these kids, they haven't. So, man, I would say in such a leadership role with where you've been and where Bobby Harris is, how do you help these kids along with the stuff they don't know?
Well, and I told them at the first meeting, most of them were 18, a few of them were 19 when they came in. And I said, hey guys, I'm going to treat you like an adult. I think you are an adult, like I said, when 19 years old, I mean, I was cruising around a lot of places all by myself, no phones, no, and so anyway, I just told them, you're an adult now. I'm going to treat you like that till I can't. And you've all had parents. I'm not here to be your parent. If you do something wrong, there will be consequences. I always made sure that the punishment fit the crime. I mean, I was young, and a lot of people wouldn't believe this. I did silly things, but I really did. I wanted to help them. Wanted to help them learn. And Walt told me one time about schools. He said, you have a half hour to figure out who wants what out of the school, and then you pick them out. And really, coaching was kind of the same way. There's kids that were there to get an education and thought it'd be fun to rodeo while they're doing it. There was kids came in there and they're hoping to be a 10-time world champ, and they were just using college as a chance to get to better themselves, a lot of practice. And we did there at Casper. I mean, we roped a lot, and you get all kinds, but I sure enjoyed the kids that, which JD had him so far. I mean, Trey Yates come through there and he roped so good. Both my boys, Trey Smith, there was a calf roper named and he quit. They have a ranch up there, and he just went home, went to ranching. But Lincoln Peterset could really rope calves, and we've had a lot of good kids. That's just a few of them, and it was fun, because they'd grind it out. Those were the guys that were roping their sawhorses, after practice and stuff, but I loved them all, and it keeps you young. I mean, you see the stupid stuff they do and the jokes they play on each other, and you're like, no, that's pretty funny.
Let me show you some of the cool stuff that me and Cheese and Britt and some Turtle. Let me show you some outdated jokes that are still pretty damn funny too.
Yeah, and that's that's when they thought they were pulling the wool over. Sandy Bob Forbes was my rough stock coach, and I said, hey, you're not going to do anything we haven't done, I promise. So when you're sneaking around, we know it. We're just letting you do it.
That's exactly right. This episode is brought to you by New One Time Blues. This 2019 Bay Roan Stallion by One Time Pepto out of a new Baby Blue is a rising star as a rope horse sire. His lifetime earnings is over $370,000 and is paid into Regatta Buckle, Gold Buckle Fraternity, Gold Buckle Elite Breeders, Royal Crown Roping, NRCHA Stallion Incentive, and will be enrolled in more incentives when foals come of age. Visit GucciEquine.com for more details and breeding contract information. We'll talk a little about cattle prices. You're right in the thick of it, ranching, and talk a little bit about where the prices are. Where do you see where cattle are going? And then talk a little about what some of the concerns are up there in the north with it not being, it hasn't rained and no snow, with what kind of obstacles you guys might be enduring, maybe possibly through the summer.
Man, Charlie, I think these prices are going to hold, which everybody knows it is a great time to have a cow. Record book prices. And somebody said to me, hey, we've never seen anything like this. We've never seen cattlemen make this much money. But about the time the cattle market went higher and higher and higher, so did everything else. I mean, you go buy a tractor tire or you have to get another ranch truck that, even if you buy a used reliable ranch truck, they used to be 12,000 to buy you something that'd get around. Now they're 20. And so everything's went up, but yes, it's a good time to be ranching. And it's the first time, and I'm just going off what I read, but it seems to me like beef finally hit supply and demand, like everything else. And there's not.
Why do you think that happened?
I think, you had, of course, shutting down the Mexican border had a lot. They had a drought out in California, not long after that. I mean, they lost hundreds of thousands of cows out through South Dakota and North Dakota in a blizzard. And then I think ranching's such a hard lifestyle. I mean, it's and a lot of things that happen, in my opinion, the kids go get a job and they get married and they have weekends off and paid vacations. And then the old man says, boys, I'm too old to do it. I think I'm going to turn the ranch over if you want it. Well, the wife and the son, they're making good money. And they say, Dad, we don't want it. I mean, I don't want to work that, and you get this many cows, it's a 7-day-a-week deal. And so I think the ranches are getting sold. They're buying them to hunt, they're buying them to develop. And so I think less and less ranches, less and less cattle, just like this drought we're going through. I was talking to a guy day before yesterday, and if we have to cut our herd back, when summer actually hits, if the water, and we've got a lot of creeks that run through our place. So I'm praying we'll be okay. But if you have to cut your herd back, it's so bad in Montana, South Dakota, Colorado, we're all droughted out. Who's going to buy them? If I said, geez, I'm going to cut back 100 cows, I don't know who would want them. Because they're all in the same boat. The reason I'm selling is the reason they're selling. And so I don't know. So say that happens, well, now you got less cows. And I just think it's kind of the perfect storm for the prices to be like it is. I talked to 3 or 4 guys that had feedlots and they're running at 60% and don't want to. I mean, they'd stock them if they could, but by the time all these feedlots get a bite of the calves in the fall, I think they're like, where do I get some more? I mean, I've sold all mine and all the neighbors have sold all theirs, and there's just not a lot of cows around.
Yeah, because then you're stuck feeding a lot of hay. Then your cost goes up, correct? To where you guys have a little bit of advantage having some higher ground. Some of the people in the north have some advantages being able to get on the mountains if you get enough snow, correct?
Right. And like this year, our grass is coming, and the mountains are amazing. If you get any rain, any snow, there is grass. A lot of the people around here, like I said, we have some live creeks and live water, streams that run all the time. But we have neighbors around here that are reservoirs and a lot of wells and stuff. And if they dry up, I mean, what do you do? And if we didn't have mountain ground, I mean, it's going to burn up and dry up so fast. If this pattern stays, I mean, like I say, we're supposed to get 7 inches of snow in the next 2 days. So, but if the pattern stays, I mean, all that stuff's going to dry up, and I don't know what will happen. And ranching's so unique because you're not against anybody but Mother Nature, really. And then we produce a product that when you're done, okay, here's my product. And the world tells you what you can sell it for. Then they say, well, we like your product, we'll give you this. Ford doesn't build a truck and say, well, yeah, we like your truck. We're going to give you 33,000 this year. They price it. And that's the challenges of it. Mother
That is
Nature.
that's a great analogy, because that is such a challenge, and how much little you have control over your
Oh yeah.
destiny in a way, between weather and between prices,
Yes. Yeah.
taxes.
And
Then
we've been
now
there
you
so
got to
long.
battle
I
with
mean,
property taxes and being able to keep the ranch as well. So there's
that's the other thing when you say about, why is cattle going down? I think there's a lot of that, the kids that do some of these old ranchers, and I'm right on the line, a lot of the young ranchers, they understand money, but then you get guys like my dad's age, they're just running ranches and then boom, they die. Here, the kid gets it and they hit you with an inheritance tax and property taxes. And even though the kids say, man, I want the ranch, they can't keep it.
yeah.
And that happens a little bit. And I think it's all, this new generation, like I say, I'm right in between my dad and then these guys that are starting to ranch that are 30 years old. They're a little sharper. They understand putting money in the market.
probably understand the tax code seems to be the
Yes.
biggest one.
Yep.
So then that way, when it does pass to the next generation, what loopholes or what lines of the tax code can I be ahead of? So when this happens, you can just flow right on and nothing changes. And that is, I think, where the advantage of being able to stay in it, and then being able to surround yourself with the people that understand it. So then that way you ain't left holding the bag of shit. Now we got to sell it. I mean, that would be,
Well,
we've heard so many guys that have been in that situation, and it's horrible to hear.
and what's making them sharp are these cattle prices right now. Since I've had my own cows, and this is the first time that I've ever made real money. I mean, you sell a bunch of calves now, and they bring 2,800 a pop. There's some real money there, and it, like I said, it's not the profit. The profit hasn't really spread, but the money you bring in is. I mean, I will say that. Your checks at the end of the year are bigger, and you have to be a little smarter or they'll tax the piss out of you.
So how is it now with where you're at with the cattle prices being high? What are you trying to do to make sure, because we all know that it's kind of inevitable, is the fact that like a black swan event shows up. So how does a guy now with the prices, and there's now there's net being actually produced? What is a rancher trying to do now to where he's ready for when things, a black swan event or when cattle prices go down, whatever it is? How is a guy now trying to get ahead of that?
Like for me myself, while the cattle are doing good, get the debt down. That's and most ranches have to carry a little, whether you buying equipment, and like I said, the tractors, the last couple years we've tried to upgrade. We got a new few pieces of equipment and different things, and trying to buy some stuff that helps you write off, but also I try and make sure that if the bank ever called in my note on some of the stuff I have, that you could pay it off, because uh debt, debt is, and one thing I will say about the young ranchers, they think it's going to be this way forever. And I don't think, the first year I had my own cows, my calves, I sold them for about 850 a pop. And I don't think, well, if it ever dropped back to that, we're all out of business. I mean, it'd be like if the rodeos went back to the day money's paid 800,
12.
you'd be
Yeah.
like, well, I'm done. And so we won't see them drop back there, but I'm not banking on, I'm trying to run my business on calves bringing 1,800. Anytime I do anything or buy anything, I think, if my calves bring 1,800, will I still be okay? And then anything over that, gosh, you got to play it safe though. I mean, and like I said, the young guys don't think it can ever drop. It can drop in the blink of an eye for whatever, this screw worm. I'm not saying it's not real, but I also think, mad cow, they used that to bring prices back down a little bit and stuff. And in the blink of an eye, they can go from 2,800 right back to 1,800, and you're 1,000 a head less.
Yeah.
This is just water.
We've had so many red Solo cups together that I didn't even think about it. This is just coffee.
Just water, folks.
This is going to be one conversation we'll probably remember.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, man, I'd love to talk about your career. I would love to talk about, we've had, it's been fun to be able to bring in the past world champs. I wish so much that after I did that podcast last year with T. Woolman, I wanted Leo Camarillo on so bad. I would have loved to have started with that guy and talk about, what that guy did, because he was the guy, like we talked on the phone the other day. He's the guy that found how to make sure that heel loop hits the right time and the timing of the hop and all that stuff. Probably one of the first guys to found that. Then you had Alan Bach come through there. Then you had Walt Woodard. Bobby Harris was kind of the only one in between. It seemed like we're and Alan between the dynasty of Jake and Clay. Then where Speed and Rich showed up. Then we had a podcast with Rich talking about, 8 consecutive gold buckles. I mean, that's one thing to make the NFR 8 times in the world, but to be the best in the world for almost a decade, same thing with Jake and Clay for almost a decade. There were 7 of them, and, to have that dominance that we've seen in team roping. Well, then after Rich, then it was kind of hit and miss. Then we seen Patrick come in there. Then we seen Alan Bach show back up again after however long. Then Walt Woodard. You're like, what the crap? Like these guys, you're never going to hold them 2 down. Then it kind of mixed up with Randon Adams, and then you started seeing Von On show up, and then Patrick again, and then you showing up there in 2011 with Turtle. It was interesting to see where we've seen for so long just dominance of one team. Then it was at that time where you never knew what year from the next who was going to win a world title. It started kind of the playing field started getting a little bit more level, but man, it's been so much fun, man, getting to talk with Clay and Walt and Alan and especially Big Money. God, I love that guy coming up there from kind of your area too, where he's a rancher, and seeing all walks of life and how they got to it. It was fascinating. And but to be able to talk a little about yours was cool in the fact of, for one, how long it took you. I mean, you stayed persistent for a very long time just before you made your first NFR.
Yeah.
Then not only that, then once you made it, then to be able to conquer it. I mean, that's pretty dang cool to be able to think about, with all these kids talking about, well, I just ain't got the money. Oh, I just ain't got the rig. There's a lot of guys that didn't have any of that, and they all made it. A lot of us back then didn't have any of that either. And so, a lot of those cop-out excuses that a guy hears a lot of times, and you're like, no, the cool things about the podcast, that there's not that history ain't in the books, but we get to have those conversations, and we get to talk about all the guys that came from nothing and became one of the top at their events. And so that's what I think was really cool too. But, obviously being able to tell some stories along the lines as well, because you and Buck Campbell are probably and Turtle. I would say Turtle Powell is you guys are my 3 favorites. That when you guys talk, everyone stops and listens. You and Turtle used to be 2 guys. If I hit one in the back of the head or whatever, something went wrong, I found you guys because the rest of the day I'll have forgotten about it. I'll have laughed. Like you guys and your storytelling ability is phenomenal. So when I'm telling you, I'm so excited for this, just for your story, but then also all the stories that we all pile up, after how many decades of rodeo. And so coming from Casper, being a cowboy, being on the ranch all your life, talk a little about, with you and your brother growing up, roping, ranching, how you guys got started as you started going to some team ropings and, eventually going up and down the road.
Well, and a lot of people did. I'm not saying we were groundbreaking or anything like that, but we came from an area right here that there was no team ropers right here in our little ranching communities called Bates Hole, but there was no team ropers here. They were all kind of up by Gillette. And my brother, when he was 17, he went over to the neighbors in town and they roped a little bit. And that was the first time we had a big old, and when I say slow, he was a Western pleasure horse for a long time. And anyway, you could outrun him in overshoes. And my brother took him over there and was just like, he's going to head on him. And that was our first time. I watched it. I didn't even rope then, but that was the first time I remember any of us ever roping in an arena. We'd been to Brandon's and all that stuff. And my dad was, The one thing we could do was ride. You know, my dad broke horses and rode horses for the public his whole life. And then when we got, you know, when we got 12, 13 years old enough to help him, we rode a lot of colts. And so we could ride really well, but we roped terrible. And so that was the first time my brother went over there and roped. And then I started roping about 14, and we went to D and Mike school. That was the first time anybody'd ever told me how to swing or, you know, said, and I'm sure looking back, and now that I've done some schools, I'll bet Mike Beers thought, holy mackerel, is this cat? You know, your loop doesn't have to be that big, and you have to point it at the cow. And, but, so anyway, but once Justin and I got started, I mean, it was truly a passion. It was like, gosh, this is fun. And we got one of them cowboy toys, and then, you know, there was no buildings. We sure didn't have one at that time. And so the winters, you're just done. And we got a couple goats. We roped them goats, and truly, like I say, it was a passion. I mean, you've been to our outdoor arena when we were kids. We got one from Joe Roberts, and it was 100 by 200, and we built it exactly to the design. The chute was right in the middle, so you had 50 feet to the right, 50 feet to the left. You know, Justin and I have laughed. I'm like, why didn't we put more room to the left of it? Well, you know, the specs called for right in the center. It didn't have a return alley. Sometimes we'd have to rope the last two and drag them in the catch pin. And anyway, when I look back, I think, why did we rope? I mean, we loved it, but it was a lot of work to do it. So anyway, it turned out, you know, he got a rodeo scholarship, and I did too. And we went on through rodeo, and I truly think, you know, like you talking about these guys riding show horses and stuff. I think our roping came on kind of fast because, like I say, we'd rode so much junk with my dad. We both rode really well. You know, I could make a horse go where I wanted him to, so at least I could get position. And then our roping came on, you know, pretty fast. I started at 14, and by college, I mean, had scholarships to go to college, and that way we could, you know, that's how we afforded to go. Just like I say, and a lot of kids that way. But went to college, won second in the world, or second in the nation in college, with a guy named Jhett Johnson. He was calf roper mostly, but he headed for me at the college finals and stuff. And then I started in the pros, and I had a guy ask me one time, you know, because I made the finals at 35, was my first time. And he said, well, how come it took you so long to make it? Because I sucked. You know what I mean? I truly, I look back, and there's no way to explain it. You know, Britt would tell me a few things, and you know, I got help from people, and I tried to be a good student. I listened, but when you don't have any foundation in team roping, it just seemed like it took a little longer. And
well, especially back then, there wasn't the videos, there wasn't the technology. You're trying to figure it out yourself. You're watching these guys rarely on TV. The only time that guy got to go and study him, you had to go out there. It's almost like college. You had to leave home, go out there and get your butt kicked, enter and stay after it, and watch it to try to, when you get home, somehow try to emulate what you saw.
yes,
And that was, it's different then than it is now. And so when a guy's trying to figure it out on his own, then the hardest things that I've seen, and that I was with it too for the longest time. You know, I grew up in the 80s, freshman row in the 90s, you know, the Matt Tyler swing, the Charles Pogue swing, even a little bit of Jake Barnes' swing. When Speedy showed up, got outdated. So you had to keep evolving, and then Drigger shows up, you know, and so what there is when you're talking about how you've learned how to rope and how you did it for so long, now you got those tweaks along the lines here and there. Those are some of the hardest things to do, especially with the swing, in my opinion, because that's the one thing a guy's done the most is swing his rope. And then to try to tighten or redevelop your technique without not going back to how it was. Those are some of the most frustrating times that I remembered as well.
well, and I do, it is frustrating. And because, like you said, and then when we moved to Oklahoma, up here, the steers were so bad when I was a kid. Man, there was Josh Stout, Craig Mater, Bob was around. There was Leroy Milligan. There was a whole slew of guys. They got both feet every time. Every time. They learned how to rope walkers, draggers. And yes, it took them a minute. Well, my brother and I, we get to Oklahoma, Joe Maker and Britt and all them guys, they're beating us with a leg. I mean, I could mess around and get both feet, but when you got south, they were so much faster. And so then you're like, man, I'm roping really good, but I'm roping too slow. So now you're right back to the frustration deal. But I will say, when I look at ropers, and I'm such a fan of the sport, the guys, when you think of Al and Clay, Cody Cowden, and, Bob Harris, JD, guys that you go, hey, if I need 2 feet, I'm calling that guy. They were all self-taught. And I think the young guys now, there's so many schools, videos. I mean, if you honestly put in all the videos and you just took a day and you watched 3 or 4, you'd be so confused. Because there's so many different styles. The swings, I think you can swing a rope how you want, but the delivery's all the same. I mean, nobody puts the loop in with their palm up. You know what I'm saying? And so, but the self-taught guys have such a foundation to go back to where I see young guys wondering, they can call me or you or Clay or, our cell phones. Hey, watch this video. What do you think? To where they don't have to find it out 100% by themselves. And when I look back, the guys that did find it out by themselves and learn it, man, they're solid. They are able to catch head duckers. They're able to, when I was roping with T and my boys were little, we were at Fort Worth and had a steer with little old horns, and they went straight up, and Kellen was starting to rope. And so he understood, but he said, he doesn't have very big horns, Dad. And I said, no, not much. And he said, can T get him? T can get him. You know what I mean? And T got him. It just, them guys
chalk that pool stick up and put some English on this baby right here.
Exactly.
And he could do it.
Yeah,
he was a horn roper.
That's, and that's the other thing I really enjoy. And I have knowledge of the game because I was right in the middle of, like you said, I was rodeoing when Speedy showed up, and I was rodeoing when, like Steve and Britt and Jake Barnes and all them guys were doing good. And so I watched the transition just like you did. And, we were somewhere when Speedy first showed up. We were one of them fall rodeos, and he won the first round. And the second round, at that time of my life, of your life, I mean, it was like so many 2-headers. You had a program. If you won the first round, I don't care if you had the best one. You didn't win the second round, probably. You settled for fourth, but you won the average. So Speedy wins the first round, and his second one tried a little, and hit the barrier and sent it. And he roped him right across the shoulders. And I remember people were like, why would he do that? That's crazy. And then down the road, you see what he became. And it's like, he had a vision. He knew what he could do, and he wasn't going to quit doing it till he conquered. And it was, and then the same deal. I see him at Walla Walla, him and Rich had a steer that run a lot harder than that one I'm talking about. And he sent it out there, and it was, they were 4.9 on a steer that truly screamed. And I watched that, that was probably, there's probably 6 years, 8 years in between the two steers I'm talking about. And he got that figured out, and it was amazing to watch him. And then Daniel Green starts doing it a little bit. And then Wade Wheatley, I thought Wade Wheatley was a little bit ahead of his time. I mean, he was another one that could reach, and I got to rope with Doyle. Doyle was, to me, he was the HP was the first bomber, but
Mm-hmm.
Doyle
had I thought Doyle was ahead of his time. I thought his swing, I thought where everything went on evenly and tight and stayed ahead of his horse, where he pushed forward. Like, I thought Doyle was truly ahead of his time. And then Speedy multiplied it off steroids,
Right.
from there. but it was a lot the same. You know, you've seen some characteristics of that. And Doyle was, I mean, he was the guy that, man, you couldn't wait to watch him at the NFR. For me, I loved it. I loved watching that guy rope.
Me too. And then when I did get to rope with him and Doyle and I roped, I mean, he was the first time I'd had experience with a guy throwing 2 coils or more, and it just fit like a glove. Boom. And they would turn right now. You know, everything was snappy. And when I first got out there, there was 2 styles. You had Charles Pogue and the heeler healed fast, or you had like Jake and Mark Simon and some of them guys, and it was sure Lidden. I mean, it was sure fun to watch. But when those guys caught, hey, they ducked. And so like it got a little rough. They'd rope them on the 3rd hop. Well, either way, the time was still 5-6, you know, however you did it. And then when you seen Doyle do it, I seen Doyle and Mike Beers run a steer at Casper one time. Steer's running just like I said, and he reaches, and of course you know how Beer Nuts is. I mean, he nailed him right now. And I was like, geez, I think they were 5'8" or something, you know, and it was like, wow, what a run.
Because back then it was very common to see somebody in the team had to be conservative.
Yes.
And it seemed like on the head side, when you seen Matt Tyler, you seen Charles Pogue, those guys hit the barrier, had running head horses. They were conservative on the head side. And whoever's going to be back there, whether it was Shag, whether it was Britt, whoever it was going to tee off, or Mike Beers, they were going to tee off. Somebody had to be aggressive. Somebody had to be conservative. And on the head side, it seemed like as expensive as head horses, they were more expensive than heel horses. A lot of those guys did it to maintain those horses.
Right.
And then you've seen the guys aggressive on the head side where their horses start ducking and dropping at the end of the year, quit working, and then the healers just left on defense the whole time. But when they do catch, you're right. There's a lot of them that the times are kind of evenly the same. It's just how long do you want to keep ducking your head horse and keep trying to find more horses? So there was that strategy and things that people were looking at. But then when you've seen 2 mad bombers like a Speed Williams and a Dennis Gates, where both are on the aggression, man, a lot of day monies, but at the time, not a whole lot of averages. So it seemed like at that era, that was kind of how a guy looked at it.
Well, and the other thing is, when Justin and I first showed up, I mean, there was a whole slew of guys just like us, the Moore brothers and Rube, and I mean, there was a whole bunch of guys that were roping for a living. I'm not saying they don't rope for a living now, but I'm talking about lose your truck, have to go home roping for a living. And so, like I said, somebody had to be conservative because you had to catch a lot of steers. Plus they were all 2-headers. I mean, anything that mattered in your life was a 2-header. Cody was a 2-header. You know, the 1-hitters were standouts. Livingston, Red Lodge, they were always 1-hitters. Belfouche used to be a 2-header. They were all 2-hitters. So you kind of had when you practiced, you could even make a program. And then now that everybody goes at them, you know, you watch 2-9 for Pete's sakes. A friend of mine said that some of them college kids were like, it wasn't a crossfire. It was legal all day. It wasn't even close. And Miles said they were 2-9. Don't tell me it wasn't close. You can't push the envelope and be 2-9. He didn't 3rd hop him, I promise. And but you know, it's gotten so fast and so reckless. And the 1-headers and the tournament style rodeos, I mean, the headers aggressive, the heelers aggressive, and like you said, in the old days, if you won the first round and you got too reckless and missed him, you'd be out of partner if you did it too many times. Because I mean, those guys are sending money home. That's truck payments and house payments, and so when you started trying to heel a little bit stupid, and you know, and I probably did. I never dreamed of being a jackpotter. You know, when I was a kid and we watched it on TV, like you said, I always wanted to heel fast. And so when I showed up and got the opportunity, I mean, I threw, and like I said, it stings when you go south and they beat you with a leg. Well, you go home that summer and you're like, when college got out, hey, I'm gonna work on my speed game. And so I got a little more reckless. I'm sure, and you could probably attest to this, there's a lot of guys that thought, wished he'd have just caught, but I wanted to heal fast. Jackpots didn't interest me that much, and they should have, because they're your bread and butter. If you can win the feist, well, there you go. You're set for the season. But I always wanted to be, a rodeo healer. That's the only thing I ever thought about.
This episode is brought to you by NRS. NRS is your go-to for all things Western, from saddles and tack to boots, hats, apparel, and of course, ropes. They're known for carrying the largest selection of the freshest ropes, which is crucial whether you're just getting started out or already a champion roper. Shop in stores or online at nrsworld.com with my 10% off discount code Charlie to save on your next order.
Well, that was the one thing I remember, because I think my permit year was in 96, 95, 96 when I got my permit. And that's when I remembered seeing you and Justin, I think in 96, the BFI. And nice head horse, nice heel horse, and you guys did good then. Was that the year you guys did so good at the BFI?
Yes, sir.
That's
Yeah.
when I started seeing you guys kind of on the radar, was about then. And that was also when I started going too. So it was a little bit of the mix between the two.
Well, and that was the first year we rodeoed. I mean, we were around, and I got I filled my permit in 92, but then in 96, he got that head horse. We left the house, I mean, with not very much money, and we thought, well, we can, honest to God, I think we had $1,200 in my account, which was, it went way farther then, but we were just going to go have some fun and see how it went. And we placed at El Paso. It was winter rodeo then. And then we won the first round of San Antonio. That was back when it was a 2-header and a short. I mean, anybody could go. And anyway, we won second in the average behind T and Rich. And then we won Tucson. And so we left the house to go to some rodeos and have a good time. And all of a sudden I can't remember, Charlie, I think we were 6th in the world when Tucson got over and stuff. And that kind of ended the winter. And so we went to California, and I think I'm pretty sure my brother ended up like 17th and I was 18th in 96, but that was exactly, you're exactly right. He had a good horse, and I was trying to heal fast, and that was, I roped with Richard Agarin one time, and that's when I figured out me and Bombers didn't do good, and Pook could head now from a ways back, him. And
he was also another guy ahead of his time.
Yes, he was. He spun me one at Tucson, and I run smooth by and stuff. I mean, I'm thinking, well, Pook will be coming, it's a long score, and I'm out there kind of holding the steer up to him, and all of a sudden this head rope hits. And I mean, we should have been, honest to goodness, probably 4-6 when nobody's
At
even
Tucson.
trying to be.
Yeah.
At Tucson. And I run by and missed him. And just we didn't do very good together. And it was like, I'm trying to heel aggressive. This guy's heading aggressive. And so I had all my success with guys that had good horses and set them up and let me do my deal.
Well, so talk a little bit about in 96, you and Judge start cracking out, going to all the rodeos, placing in the BFI. You guys had a chance, if I remember right. You guys are right there almost throughout the whole year with a chance to make the NFR. Was that correct?
Yeah, and 2 times during the season, even with us winning, I mean, we were getting pretty low on money, and my brother told me not to enter a couple weeks. But then you could enter, you'd enter Monday for the rodeos that coming week. Not that week, but you'd enter about 10 days before the rodeo started. And anyway, he said, man, I'm broke. And so we pulled up, and then we did really good at Albuquerque, and we took off again. And then same deal. We went to the Cow Palace, and we had a chance, but we could have flew to Casper, and there was a rodeo up in Oregon somewhere. And we'd had to do some flying around and stuff. And my brother was like, let's just go to the Cow Palace. Can't really afford, flying, or sure couldn't charter. And so we just went to the Cow Palace, and we did good. We placed in a round, won fourth in the average, and that was kind of the end of the season, you know, and truly had a chance. And like I said, I think Justin was 17th and I was 18th when the year was over in 96. And that kind of lit the fire to keep rodeoing, you know, is the first time you realize, hey, maybe I'm getting
Maybe I got
good.
a chance.
Maybe I got a chance to do this. And, you know, it was sure the most money him and I had ever had in our pockets at some times. You know, I think we won about 12,000 that winter. And like I said, we left with about 1,200. So put another zero on it.
When you got done with that, did you and Justin stay roping for a little while? Did you start
No,
roping with some other guys?
That's when I roped with Pook and he started roping with Mick Gomez and we buddied. We just buddied so we could stay in the same rig and stuff. And like I said, I didn't do very good. I can't remember how him and Mick did. And then my brother, he got married in 96 and just kind of wanted to, which we were roping with different people, but he started going another route. He started working at the Lazy E and training horses under John Miller. And, he went that way. And I mean, I just kept grinding and finding different partners. And, you know, once I quit roping with him, I was always looking for the next partner. You know what I mean? It was like, God, if I could rope with that guy or this guy. And, probably should have had a little more loyalty. I mean, you know, because if it wasn't going good, it seemed like I would split with a guy, and you know how it is. It takes a little time to get your teamwork down. And so, but I just kept grinding it out. And my brother decided to start training horses, and they were showing horses at the Lazy E, and I just kept going, I guess.
So when you kept after it, who was some of the guys you watched? Who was some of the guys you studied? Who was the guys you were breaking it down with to where you're like, in order to get to where I want to go, what have I got to change? What do I got to do? What is it that you're starting to learn as you're staying out there, that you're watching these guys and studying? Because your bud is now with all these guys at this point. You know, you've got access to all these guys and stuff. So what were you starting to learn to, you know, be able to start applying some of the stuff that you're watching?
Well, and then, like I say, I mean, healers, geez, they just, when you talk about the legends, they were all still rodeoing. Plus you had Britt, Cody Cowden, and some of the guys I named, and there's a whole slew of them. But if you roped a leg back then, I mean, you truly could let your rope go. You weren't going to place in the average. And because the times were way slower, but everybody caught. Well, anyway, I get to watching Clay and Albach and big trap ropers, you know, guys with a lot of. Clay O'Brien was probably my guy, but I would see his loops hit and they would almost stand there for just the blink of an eye before the cow went in it. And I thought, that's what I need to do. So that next year, my brother's father-in-law raised some roping steers, and I got 13 heifers from him. And we had a kid work for my dad, Bobby Brooks, that handled steers good. You know, Bobby wasn't necessarily a big time header, but he could handle them. So we'd rope them 13 heifers every morning before we got busy or even had time to have a bad day, you know, because I don't like to rope when you're hurrying and about half pissed off. But so we'd rope first thing in the morning, Bobby and I really worked on trying to get my rope to hit the ground, and it paid off. And then I got to thinking, you know, because if I threw the right trap, I seen Clay O'Brien and Al Bach and, you know, all of them. And it's a shame that they didn't have phones, you know, where they could post all that, because while the headers were so raw, you've seen it. I mean, I've seen them guys heel steers that you're like, wow. I know it wasn't a semi-cross, but second jump, he might be just short of a backflip and they'd catch him. And so I got to watching that, and I thought, if I threw a good trap, how do you miss him? I mean, as long as he goes forward. And so I started working on that, and that's kind of where my chances to make the finals and everything bloomed. I got to where I found the horses I liked, and I got to where I'd be at the end of the switch. And when their spine straightened out before they went forward, I'd try and get that trap on the ground, and it got to where it was paying off. But I watched Clay and Al and you know, the trap ropers, and even to this day, I think it's still, you know, I see Camish's deal timing a trap, and I'm like, well, if you throw a big trap in time, you're successful.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember visiting with you so much back then too. And I remember you talking so much about Shag, Steve
Mm-hmm.
Northcott, you know,
There's
that
one I
guy's
forgot.
style, his horses behind Charles Pogue. You know, that guy was ahead of his time in a lot of different ways too. You're seeing his kid now just being just as dominant. You know, talk a little about when you study and watch that guy, because man, what that guy did back in the day too was pretty dang cool.
God, I'm glad you said it, because I didn't bring him up on the show here, but yes, Shaggy was one when he showed up. I mean, his loops were big. He roped really close. Like his horses would kind of slide right up to the cow. The cow's butt would be right there at the end of the bridle, and he'd stand up a big one and caught a lot. And so he was my next guy. You're exactly right. It was Clay got me thinking about it, and then Shag showed up, and I'm like, man, that guy's really impressed me. And I got his video. He had some left. I called him after I got to know him, and I said, the boys were roping, and I called and got one of his DVDs, and we watched it. And, well, to be honest with you, he didn't break down healing in his DVD as much as some guys do, because I really think Shaggy was so damn good. He wasn't sure why he could do it. You know, I mean, some guys can tell you, oh, I swing my rope at this direction, and you know, Shaggy could just bag them, and
Bag 'em.
and I don't know if he knew exactly why. I mean, I know he did, but that was the guy I watched.
He
And
was,
that's
I'm
when I
sure it
started
was,
looking
I'm
closer.
sure it was there first, and I'm sure it was there probably before him, but he was just the first one I remembered. He was the first one that I remembered that used the goat to save horses and get a lot of reps, healing those goats around there and staking them out, getting where you learn timing, you know, almost like where you're practicing something that's harder than the actual steers. You know, and what is the pastime when you don't have 100 head of steers laying out there and you don't have 10 heel horses lined up or a partner that's able to turn you 100, 150 steers? Well, what's the next best thing to learn how to rope feet, you know? And I thought that was very interesting, where he was one of the first guys I seen that kind of made roping the goats popular.
Well, and like I said, when we were kids, Justin and I had two goats, and and but we roped them completely wrong. We turned them loose in this barn where my dad rode cutting horses, and then we just run them around. I mean, we didn't stake them or nothing. So we're throwing at these goats. But anyway, it's funny you say that, because Carson was visiting with Shaggy the other day, and Shaggy was telling him, you know, you ever rope a goat? And he hadn't. Well, Carson, now he's got two goats there at the house. He stakes and ropes, and yeah, and you watch them guys, it's so much rope control. I think if you rope a goat wrong, because sometimes when you heel them, they'll just stop and bounce straight up. Well, to keep them and catch them, you have to kind of snatch your heel rope. But I think your rope control, and like Carson and I talked about it, I said, now that he knows what he's after, them goats are really good. And physically, I mean, you run a goat for an hour, you're doing yourself pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you know, Shag, he talked about that in his DVD, roping goats, and he just, and I liked how his horses worked. You know, they come in.
Dunny, and yeah, he has some good ones.
Well, and when Al Bach bought Dunny, I rode him. I rode him at St. Paul. I rode him 2 or 3 different times, and he was, wow. That was one of the better ones I've ever threw a leg over. And it was funny because Al said, hey, when you catch at St. Paul, he said, when you catch, pull on him. And I thought he was teasing me, because you never had to tell me to pull on one. And so I'm like, yeah, I bet. And he goes, no, I'm serious. Just make him, you know, hold him. I'm like, oh, even better. But that sucker could run, give you a shot. I mean, he was truly a good horse. And I rode Diesel a lot, getting off track, but
Well, Randon Adams, yeah, Diesel, he was cool because I think there was a style back then because I remembered hearing guys talk about that healed on Clay's heel horse. Gosh dang, now that I have to think about it, Ike. And I remember guys talking about how strong he was because I feel like guys back then balanced themselves on the reins a lot to keep them pushed up and in their hand to where it was almost like they could balance off of them and still heal at the same time. Because I remember guys talking about getting on Ike and they're like, that Clay Cooper's left hand is way stronger than it looks. But there was a lot of that back then where that was kind of a style, wasn't it?
Yes. A lot of, the horses were starting to get a lot of speed. And like that's when Matt Tyler and Charles and Cheese and all them guys had them good head horses. That heel horse better be able to run. And like you said, Dunny, Diesel, and I never rode Ike, but yes, the people that did said, hey, you would think he's running off. And they said Iceman of Corey Kuntz's was real strong going down the arena. And he's another one I never rode. But yes, all of my horses were strong. And you're exactly right. My my idea and what felt good to me is I wanted that sucker running and push him through the bridle. But when the head rope hit, my favorite horses that I had, and it felt like you hit a Jake brake, they'd be just, you might think, hey, he's running off. And when that head rope hit, it was just like, that was a good feel to me. But, and back to Diesel, I mean, I rode him at Laughlin and had 2 lopers and like he was all in, and he worked on them too. But if you had a medium steer to where you didn't have to pull on him at all, geez, what a horse.
Well, I remembered also too was the longevity you had where you stayed out there and kept going, not making the NFR, staying hooked. For one, you better love it. You better love what you're doing to be able to get your ass kicked that long and to keep doing it. But the one thing I swear that had to have what kept you going too was the amount you guys had fun. Like you had fun rodeoing, whether you won, whether you lost. Talk about some of the guys you rodeoed with. Talk about some of the guys you were out there that I mean, you guys truly kept it fun. And then that had to be a lot of what kept the guy out there as well. Because if you're just focused on winning and you're not winning, it's pretty easy to want to go home.
Right. And truly, and I've told my boys that if the roping is all you like, well, I mean, hopefully you only did it for 5 seconds. And so if that's the only thing, if you didn't like the travel and seeing the country and your friends and stuff like that, it's kind of a miserable job. And I did, like I said, we come from an area where there was only 5 of us clear to the 7th grade. And so when we got out there and met people and you're seeing the country other than Wyoming, and hey, we were all in and, made lifelong friends, and it was fun. When I first started, you didn't ask, hey, are you guys going out tonight? You just asked where they were going, so we were all at the same spot, you didn't have to say, but the money wasn't as good. The sponsors weren't there. I mean, in my mind, honest to goodness, Matt Tyler was the first guy I remember showing up with Conoco and Whataburger. And it was like, geez, he's got sponsors. You know what I mean? You go back and watch the old NFRs. So when I was with Team Wyoming, the head lady, and they were really good to me, but she said, Jett, we know cowboys like to have a good time, and we're fine with that, but don't have a good time in our shirts. I get it. But I met, and gosh dang, maybe I brought it out in them. I don't know, but Turtle and Cheese and Britt, and, I had a lot of fun with Jake. I had fun with everybody. I mean, I truly enjoyed every part of it. And I think when I was young, Charlie, it probably hurt me a little bit because, while I was jumping around partners, if somebody needed a healer, I think they're like, well, hey, I'll bet Jett would rope. Yeah, he comes with a little baggage. I mean, he might be at the dance that night. And
Well, one of my favorite stories was because it kind of ties into where we're going to head with Turtle, but I still love that story, and I talk about it all the time. I think it was during Spanish Fork, if I remembered right, when I think we stayed up all night around the campfire. I think I was roping with Brett McDowell. I think Britt was there. I think Martin and JP, Lucero, Turtle, and then Britt Buckus. And it was, I think the sun came up.
oh yeah, yeah,
And
it was late, and I remember that. I remember that exactly. We all went out, and then Turtle, we went to. Well, we sat there right there, like I said, around a fire by Randy Polich's rig, and he probably appreciated it. He was trying to get some sleep, but so we decide right there about daylight to go grab some breakfast, and I remember Turtle, he got sleepy in the booth, and so Martin put his hash browns on his shoulder, and I put his omelet on this shoulder, and so when people walked in, they're like, "Why is the cowboy wearing his breakfast?" And and then Britt, because Boeing had a headquarters there. Britt, he says, "Oh man, we should have went to bed. I got to fly out here in an hour or so." And you could see people eating their breakfast, looking over like,
well, he was pretending to be a pilot.
yes,
Remember?
yes.
He was acting like he was a pilot, and he was still drunk.
Yeah, you could see people eating their breakfast and looking at us like, "Is that our pilot?" I mean, and so yeah, and then we get so we all go back to the fairgrounds and color our morning, and which it was about July 23rd or whenever them rodeos are. I mean, by 10 in the morning it's 90, and Turtle, he was still asleep in the truck. And so Martin, he's like, "This will wake him up when we get out." Left the truck running and turned the heat on high. And first thing I think when I wake up, I'm sitting there, getting myself together, and I thought, "Oh, we might have killed Turtle." And so when I see him, I said, "Man, that was funny, but was it hot?" And he said, Turtle said, "When I opened my eyes, all I did was gasp for air. I just went, and and rodeo, and that's the stuff that, like you said, now I'm here on Bates Creek. Those are my memories. I mean,
I
everybody.
remember at one point in time, we stopped there and ordered something from McDonald's at one point in time, and Turtle had just kind of popped up, and then for whatever reason, I think you guys were out of the vehicle squaring up at where you order. There at McDonald's during the drive-through.
Yeah, him and John Paul, I believe it was one of them, and which everybody knows him. If I don't care what it is, how big you are, if you want to fight, Turtle will fight.
Turtle had a switch. He
yes,
had a switch. He was the funnest guy. But if that switch flipped,
oh yeah, he would fight. But anyway, yeah. So they get out, and I'm like, well, we were having a pretty good time. And anyway, they talked about it. Nobody ever got punched, but yeah, he sat up there when we was ordering that breakfast, and I can't remember what we was talking about, but he didn't like it.
It was funny. Yeah, those are some of the stuff that I remember too. I remembered when I was rodeoing, I think in 96 or 98, that was my rookie year, and we were buddied. And Brett McDowell and I had hit I think a board or something like that on the way to the college finals. And we rodeoed in my truck all 4th of July, and there was a flat spot in my tire. And so once you got to rolling enough, it was just that whole rig would just vibrate, that 91 Dodge single cab dually, And we get to Casper and get to the rodeo, and you're like, "Well, how's it been out there?" And you walked up there, and you're like, "Hey, Charlie Brett, how'd it go out there?" And you set your foot on top of my bumper, and the bumper fell off.
Yes.
Yeah. Remember that? And I said, "Well,
yes.
About like that."
Yeah, that tells you how it's been going. Our rig has fell apart. I remember when we was buddied with you guys, we left Livingston, and for some reason, we must have been right on the reruns. And you guys left before we did. So we left Livingston. I think we were going to Belle Fourche, but anyway, we were all wrung out. and you were driving and McDowell was in the passenger seat and you're on the side of the interstate. And I said, oh, shoot, man, pull over, Randy. There's them guys. And I walked up to the rig and I opened the door and you're just sound asleep. And I said, you guys all right? You looked at me and mashed the gas. We were so wrung out that 4th of July, and Randy had his wife. I drove with Randy Polich, and his wife was with us, so we were in one rig, and you guys took your own everywhere, but we were wrung out. I opened that door, and you looked at me with big eyes and hit the gas.
Yeah, those were the things that I remember, was just how much you guys enjoyed it, between. And that was that era. It seemed like too, there's a lot of guys that, they knew that once this trip ran short, or whenever this life is over, whenever this journey stops, that's it. It's time to go to the real world, either ranching, go to work, whatever. So like back then when guys rodeoed, they rodeoed like there may not be a next year, because for a lot of guys there wasn't. So it was, the loving, drinking, fighting cowboy era, and the fact of a lot of guys partied and then they just happened to have a rodeo.
Right.
And a guy had a lot of fun out there.
It has changed. And Kel and Carson have said, geez, your stories, people aren't doing that anymore. And which, like I said, the sponsors, everything's televised. It's gotten so big, you really can't. I mean, nobody wants to sponsor somebody that's overdoing it sometimes, but but back then, I mean, they did. I mean, we had a lot of fun, and then you mix in Cheese and Britt and Turtle and some of them other guys that also like to have fun. Well, when you
talk about some of those stories, talk about some of the pranks they would pull on each other, and just the stuff that went on up and down the road that was like just knees slapping, because those guys were witty.
Oh,
that Charles and Britt, golly, I'm telling you, like, I enjoyed watching them from a distance, because I did not want to be in the center of their conversation, because those guys would annihilate you.
right. And that was, when Cheese and Britt roped, they were hilarious unless you were the subject. And then it was like, hey, I'm gonna take off, because they would make a guy feel terrible. And like Shane Schwanke, the nicest human ever. And I really enjoyed roping with Schwank. That was the first guy I made the finals with, but we had a good relationship. But Schwank, every time he seen somebody, he said, hello, and so Cheese and Britt, every time they seen him coming, hello, and I thought, you guys are teasing Schwank, and that's what they did all the time. And it just kept it fun, lighthearted, and like you say, which for me, I truly enjoyed it, because I knew it was going to end. And back then, you really didn't end with anything. I mean, everybody had rodeoed. If you could have said, well, hey, 4 more years of rodeo and I'm retired. I got my bank account. I'm done. Well, now these guys are, they're like, we're going to retire. But back then you weren't. So you might as well enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. What I remembered about Britt also was, for one, his ponytail. So he obviously stuck out. When he rode with Doyle, he was kind of he was the first guy that kind of brought some flash to heeling.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was, I wouldn't call him the Sid Steiner or his dad, Sid Rock. I wouldn't put him quite there, but for team roping, he kind of was that guy. He was the first guy you started seeing endorsements, had a pretty face. He was very, very extroverted, he have conversations with anybody. He's funny. Also, the guy was sharp. I remember hearing him somewhere along the line, he was announcing maybe one of the ropings. I mean, the guy was sharp.
That one in Ellensburg, of Scott Reps, he announced it at the Pro-Am. He announced it a couple times, and oh yeah, well, when he went to college, his deal was broadcasting, and so he was very well spoken. I mean, Rick could really talk, and I met him at the high school finals, and we just hit it off. I really don't know why. And then we went to when I went to Oklahoma to college, run into him again, and he was at Durant, and shoot, that just started our deal. And we spent like we were best friends. He sold me a couple horses. I had one die at Dodge City, colicked and died. And Britt sent me with one of his best horses, a horse he called Boot Scoot. And geez, well, I ended up buying that horse later. But he said, take that horse. And I'm like, man, he's good. And I'm like, no, I can't take your horse. What if I kill him? You know, what if his leg breaks off? And he said, doesn't matter. He's insured. Take him. You're going to need a horse for another week till you get home to your other one. And, you know, just, he was good to me, and he helped me. But he was, he was a smart ass. He was, he kept it fun, you know, and like you said, he was witty. I don't care what you said. He had an answer.
Well, it seemed like, if I remembered right, a lot of the stories came back to him on that big brawl that happened out there in California. When you heard about BJ getting whipped, when you heard about Blaine getting whipped, and all I heard was, well, that Brit.
Yeah.
So I don't know exactly what all happened there, but that was one of the more historic stories that we've heard in team roping. Was, I think, the night that they all went down over there in San Diego, somewhere down in Southern California.
Lakeside. Yeah,
Lakeside.
I was roping with Turtle then. And we roped 3 different times in our lives, but we were roping then. No, I take that back. I was roping with Cheese. I'm sorry. Turtle and I had a school in Kentucky, and anyway, he got the worst of it all. But yeah, they said that the word I got was all them. They were Navy SEALs or something. There's a Army base there, and them guys are looking at the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are looking back. And finally Britt said, you know, BJ was with him. So Britt went over there and said, here's $100, our toughest guy against your toughest guy. We're tired of you looking at us. And well, then Turtle's one told me, he said, so them guys are like, all right, well, their toughest guy wasn't even there yet. And so whoever he was, they called him. And Turtle said when it was all done, you know, BJ, Tanner Bryson, there were some guys that were tough. At Lineweaver, he was there. You know, there were some guys that were tough. And like I said, Turtle would sure fight. But Turtle said when he was done, Britt's eye was bleeding and Turtle's jaw was hanging down on his chest. And he said there was a guy in a wife beater t-shirt bouncing back and forth saying, I told you I'd get you. I told you I'd get you. And he said, we're like, you got us, man. We're done. You're the winner. So whoever that guy was, he's a handful. But I called Turtle and I heard about it, and we had that school, and I said, hey, what about the school in Kentucky? And his jaw's wired shut. He said, I ain't going.
Yeah, I remember that. He was sipping out of a straw for a while.
Yeah. He wasn't very big anyway, and he lost a lot of weight with his mouth wired shut. I'll tell you a story, because I've always laughed at this one, because he comes by it honest. His dad would, you know, you weren't going to push his buttons very long either. And Turtle told me the story. He said that they were in Reno, and a cab driver cut him off. Turtle was driving. Well, so when they got to the motel, that guy happened to go to their motel, and Turtle said, I jumped out and tapping on his window and said, get out of that car. You know, you want to drive like that? Get out of that car. We'll settle this deal. And Richard run around in front of the car, and he's beating on the hood. Bang, bang, bang. Get out of that car, you son of a butt. Bang, bang, bang. Get out of that car. And the guy just mashed the gas and left. And Turtle and I were laughing because Richard looked at him and said, mad as hell, what'd he do? Richard's ready to fight, and he don't even know what the guy did.
Yeah, when you hear that term that if my best friend goes down right there, that we're fight, we'll figure out what happened later.
Yeah.
Has your back. That was him, wasn't it?
They were funny. And, you know, and Turtle and I got so tight. I mean, like Richard and Linda and stuff, I mean, they were good to me. I mean, I really got to know those people. And to this day, I'll talk to Richard, you know, not a lot, but they were awful good to me.
This episode is brought to you by BC Insurance of Texas. an agency that's built on family values and deep roots in agriculture. Brandon and his team of agents don't just insure the farm and ranch lifestyle, they live it. That firsthand experience is what drives BC Insurance to do things differently. They don't believe in simply selling policies. Instead, they take the time to build insurance programs that eliminate gaps in coverage and truly protect the land, livestock, equine operations, and assets you've worked a lifetime to build. As an independent agency, BC Insurance partners with top-rated carriers so they can tailor coverage to fit your operation, not force you into a one-size-fits-all plan. Their focus is simple: relationships first, protection second, and peace of mind always. If you're looking for insurance from people who understand your world, visit bcinsurancetx.com and connect with BC Insurance today. We'll talk a little about now you're starting to kind of hit some strides. I think, was it 2005 or 6 was your first NFR? Was it 5?
Yeah, 05.
You and Schwank? So, you got to think when you're 96 and then, out of college, from then on to, I don't know when you got your first, your card bought. When was that? 90, 92, 93?
92, I filled my permit. And back then you had to win 2,500. I mean, it was that's not a lot. And I think they should raise it anyway. That's a whole nother subject. But, yeah, I got my card in 92 and we rodeoed and then had success in 96. And then, like I said, Judd and I split up and he was going to stay home more and I was bouncing from partners. And Doyle asked me, he said, how come you go home? Why don't you stay out here and rodeo? And, I went broke. You know what I mean? I wrote better than probably the average bear, but I didn't rope good enough. I was missing money steers and when, like I said, that's what we were doing for a living. We had no outside help. And, so when you missed a short round or something like that, I mean, it was a stinger and I just didn't rope good enough. So I would go home and God, I poured concrete and I built pole barns and I broke colts for people. And the whole time I'm thinking, I got to get better. There's got to be a better life than pouring concrete. And so anyway, I working on my horses, working on my roping. Schwank calls me. He's from Montana, and Schwank called and said, "Hey, I'll come to your circuit if you'll come up here. I want to make my circuit finals, and you make yours, and we'll see if we can just make some money." And we'd go to some amateurs, and I mean, we were roping for money. Anywhere we thought we'd win something, we went. Well,
because Schwank in the day had a dang good head horse.
Oh man, he had a horse.
And he'd already made the finals maybe once or twice, maybe invited once, and then also made it with Corey Meady, if I remember right.
Made it once. And he had that horse. He told me that when he called. He said, "Hey, I got a horse I got off the track, can fly, and he's a good horse." And I said, "Yeah, let's do it. If you'll come down here, and I'll go up there." So Schwank and I never left Montana or Wyoming. Really went in Colorado. We went down there, but we stayed in our circuits, and we won 40,000 that year. And Schwank said to me, he goes, I think with this head horse and stuff and the way it's going, we could make the finals. And I said, I do too. And like you said, Charlie, Rudy would score. You had about 20 seconds before he would swing his ass out of the corner, but all he had to do is reset him and then he'd score. And I mean, that sucker could fly. And that's when I hit my stride. Schwank was real easy to follow. I mean, he roped from about a coil back. He never was a bomber, but the handles were great. And so we won a lot, decided we could do it. In 05.
And what heel horse do you have then at the time?
I had Smokey, a gray horse. I had a guy had two horses. He was leading out of a roping one day, and Smokey was 5 when I bought him. And the guy had 2 grays, and Clint Hufty was his name. But anyway, he's leading him out of the roping, and I said, "Hey, Clint, would you sell that gray horse?" And he's like, "Yeah, he'd be expensive." And I said, "Oh, he looked like he was kind of green." And he pointed at Smokey and he said, "This one? Yeah, I'll sell this one." And so I bought Smoke that year, and he wasn't a bucking horse. That's not it. But once in a while he'd buck, and I don't care what the temperature was, how far you'd hauled him. When you hit the saddle, you could tell he was going to do it. And one day I got kind of mad at him. I thought, I'm tired of this. And so I got after him pretty good when he humped up, and I got him rode, but we just understood we won't do that anymore. I mean, if he wanted to hump up, I just babied him along because that sucker could buck. And anyway, I was riding Smoke. He was really a good horse. Matter of fact, he ended up reserve or third. I can't remember. Diesel won horse of the year, and Smokey was right there second or third. And a lot of guys rode him. Al Bach rode him, Walt rode him, and everybody that rode him liked him. So anyway, I had a good horse. We had that horse Rudy, and Schwank and I we just laid steers down all year. And we, excuse me, we knew money would get tight. It always had, for me. And so we decided not to go to any of the ropings. And I know people thought we were stupid, but like over Billy Pipe's roping the first year we went, we entered San Antone. We just didn't go to any of the big jackpots you'd think of that kind of will drain your money. We focused on that deal. And anyway, we had 54,000 at Caldwell. We did good at Caldwell. And I remember Trevor come up, slapped me on the back. And he said, "You did it, baby. You did it. You made it." And which it took about 39 or 40 to make it that year.
Because that was, I think, if I remember right, in 05, the rodeo count was 50.
Yes.
Did that sound right? Was it 40 or 50? I thought it was 50.
No, I believe the rodeo count was 50, and it was that way for a couple years. But yes, so it took 40 grand, made it. And and so we had 54 after Caldwell, and I was like, I told Schwank, I said, I think we've got it made, but I do not want to back off. I was so scared I wasn't going to make it again. I'd never made it. I assumed this year I wouldn't either, maybe. And so we kept our heads down and rodeoed, and probably, I think we went in eighth in the world that year or something, and placed in the first round. And when it was all done, we won 65,000. And
talk a little bit about that. Talk about what that was like, because you was 35, if I remembered right.
Yes, sir.
And made your first NFR. That feat right there is one to where when you show up and get that back number, when you finally see that coat that has your name on it, there's something really special. It's not that I'm saying that the 19-year-old kid doesn't appreciate it either. But when you're 35 and get that one for the first time, there's a lot different. Man, there's a lot of memories that you had for however long till when you get to 35 and finally see it again that a kid at 19 don't have.
Right. Well, and I'll tell you what, Charlie, I'd been out there so long and met so many people. There was a lot of people excited I made it. They figured, hey, this guy's going to kill himself trying to do this. And lots of fan support, lots of people calling, and then me, my family, geez, you think of, you know how it is, the sacrifice everybody makes. And finally, geez, I got 2 kids, 35-year-old man makes it finally. Everybody was pretty pumped. I was too. I mean, it was like, it was truly a dream come true. And I should have quit. I had some good horses die, and man, I'd go broke, and, the same story everybody has, but I don't know. I felt like I worked really hard at it, and I don't think God would have given me the chances and the opportunities I had if I wasn't supposed to do something with it, is kind of my feeling on it. So anyway, I stuck it out, and yeah, when I got my back number, that was good times.
Talk about too is the kids, the boys, that's pretty special too, to where, they were old enough. They kind of had an idea what was going on. They knew rodeo, and you could tell early that was going to be their passion as well. Talk about how much of a dad being able to have them see that and be able to, like, man, we finally got it done, but also this is what it takes, kids.
Yeah. And they were young enough, they just looked at it like a success, because when it was really hard, and like I said, when you're calling home and you're juggling bills and trying to make it all work, they didn't know about all that. But but they were just pumped their dad made it. They knew it'd been hard. They're like, geez. And they probably looked out there and thought, why is my dad so much older than everybody else's? But that's another thing that made it special that a lot of people won't understand just because they make it early, way earlier than I did. But man, I had my wife, my whole family, my kids, my brother. We had a huge support team that went, he did it. He did it. He always said he wanted to, and he did. And it made it great because you did get to share it with so many.
Well, then after that first NFR, how many more times did you make it before 2011? Because if I remember right, it was kind of hit and miss, staying out there, wasn't sure if you wanted to keep going. Talk a little bit about after 2005 before you got to 2011.
Well, and it'd been so hard. It'd been so hard. When I made the finals in 05, I told Jenny I was done. I said, man, I'm done. I'm going to tell Schwank, find him a guy. And see, he still had Rudy. And after the finals, it's funny how then some sponsors showed up. I got 65 grand in my pocket. I'm like, I can buy boots now. But some of the sponsors, Wrangler and Justin Boots, or it was Justin, I believe. Anyway, Tom Feller and those guys got a hold of me, and so thankful. And Classic Ropes, and anyway, I started getting some sponsors. We had a good finals, made it. And Jenny said, Schwank wants to go again. He's got Rudy. You're actually got some sponsors. Why would you quit now? You work this hard. So I said, yeah, all right, I'll go one more time. We had the ball rolling. Let's do it. And in that was 05. So in 06, Schwank and I rodeo, and we're right there. We keep falling between 14th and 18th. Just, and I end up making Omaha, and he didn't. And he was the next guy. So I roped with Joe Beaver at Omaha and Dallas. Dallas had a tour finale then. And I made the finals. Joe and I did really good at Omaha, and we won a little more at Dallas. And when it got done, Travis Tryon called me and asked me if I'd rope the finals because I knocked out Mike Jones. And so we roped, and that was 06, and we won second in the average. And
that was back in the Walt days. For a lot of people that know history, Travis Tryon had one of the best head horses in history.
Yes.
I would call Walt right there along with Scooter. There was obviously Viper and Bob, but Walt was a special kind of freak, from a good horse that was good at the NFR to a horse you go win Cheyenne on. I mean, that horse was amazing. Talk a little about healing behind that sucker.
Oh, and Clay and Travis, when they both really took off rodeo, and Young, they both rode him. How many horses, but you got to put Walt in the top 5 when you're talking Scooter and all them horses. But that horse, you could go full contact. He would hit him, and he'd bounce him twice, and he'd get ready to face. But he was so good to follow, you didn't need a third jump. I mean, you've missed or caught in the first 2 behind that horse. And so he was, and he was hurt when I went down there to practice with Travis over Thanksgiving. He'd been sore, and he had him at the vet. And so I didn't ever run a practice steer behind him. But then when we got to the rodeo, I mean, he was really good. And we won we won 72,000 at the final, second, and placed in some rounds. And the last day, Travis had a chance to win the world. And I mean, I didn't. And he said, hey, if we win the day money, I can win the world. What do you think? And we were winning the average. And I said, man, I'll play it like you are. You don't get a chance to win the buckle very often. And so we went at him and was 4 flat, and Joe Beaver and Cole Bigby was 3-9, and we won second in the average. I'm sorry, we were second. And anyway, that was really fun to me, Charlie, because we could have laid up. I mean, basically any clean run, we win second in the average, and Double T hangs it on this sucker. And when he left, I caught him, and we were 4 flat. And I thought, Yes. But anyway, so one money there. So 2 years in a row, I had good finals as I was starting to get on my feet, you know,
Because talk a little bit about going that long. Talk about debt. Talk about credit cards. Talk about what it's like right there. A little bit of, when guys talk about roping for money, you know, there's a chance you get to the rodeo, and if you ain't made your truck payment enough, you lose the truck. They come and repo your rig, and so like now all of a sudden being able to have money in your pocket, I mean, that had to be a huge monkey off your back.
well, and I've said this, and people think, oh, geez, that's crazy. I always say it like this: if the way the guys rope now, if when you bought your card, you got 1,000 points, and it cost you 10 points to enter a rodeo, or 5, or however you want to do it, but when you ran out of points, you're ineligible to the next season. Well, there would be a change in the way some people rope. If they backed in there and they're like, hey, if we go 5-4, we win third, and I get more points, because now the sponsors and the money, and you can see the way they rope. Some of them ain't fixing to go bankrupt. And so I always said it changed the way you roped when you really were broke. And in rodeo, I loved it so much. I hated going home. I love being home, but so I carried debt from I made the finals in 05. I had a credit card from 97 that I just kept making the minimum. It was just part of my life. I sent them the money, and I paid it off after that first finals. And in the memo, I wrote something, and it wasn't very nice. I told them what I thought of them, which was my fault. But I finally paid off that credit card, and yeah, debt was real. When everybody was roping for a living, I mean, and I know people, that's all they do now is rope for a living, but I mean, truly a living. And so to be able to buy an extra horse, I mean, after my second NFR was just getting on my feet to where had some bills paid down, and it's refreshing. If you
had some sponsors starting to roll in, your heel horses were starting to get good. And I remembered you were kind of in, kind of out. And then, then it seemed like about 2011 is when you and Turtle roped. Well, Turtle's a header. Like that is one of the top guys. That is one of the elite guys. When we talk about Schwank, it's not that Schwank wasn't, but it was kind of one of them circuit deals, horses fit, everything fit to where the stars magically align and stuff like that. Well, now you get a chance to rope with Turtle. Turtle's one of the guys. That's what he does. He makes the NFR every single year. He's always got good horses. It's one of your best buds. Talk a little about now is kind of now you get that opportunity to rope with Turtle and what that was like in that part of your career.
Yeah, I made it in 07, not in 08. I made it in 09. And Turtle and I roped in 08. But he won Houston with Corey Petska. And so when the year was done, I wasn't very far out. I almost made it. He made it easily. And then, let's see, I roped with Cheese in 09. And no, I'm sorry. I roped with Turtle in 10.
Well, we roped in 08.
Yes.
And then we roped. That's when we got a chance to know each other and be around. I was going through horses and stuff like that, where the ones that I'd had that got me to that point were on their way down, trying to rebalance and get more horses. That year didn't work very good, but that's when I got to know you, and we become even better buds, even from buddying and all that stuff. But then that's when I started seeing now where, your stuff in 09, 010, leading up to 11 was. It was amazing to where you think about what it was before 05.
Right. Oh, apples and oranges. But in 09, I made it with Cheese, and we won a little bit. Didn't have a great finals. And then Turtle asked me in 10, and we roped. That was the year he won. I got my years off. That's the year he won Houston. So he makes it easy. I didn't make it. And then we start in 11, and I can remember like yesterday. It's so funny because I watch people talk about their mental game and all this. And we were in his kitchen, and we had a good winter. And I think it was about maybe this time of year, probably a little earlier, but we were in his kitchen, and he said, well, we're talking about going to California. What do you think? And I said, oh, I'll go. I mean, and I was always that guy. I'll go anywhere. wherever he wanted to go. And except Fort Worth, I hated roping there, but, and I don't know why, but anyway, so are we going to Cali and this and that? And we're just talking about our season, getting it lined out. And I said, yeah. And I said, man, here's the thing. We've both made the finals, and he'd made it more than me. But I said, man, we made the finals, all that. I said, I would like to rodeo in a way to have a chance to win the world. And I know it seems like, oh, you're saying that now because you did, but that's the God's honest truth. That would have been, end of February, 1st of March. And we'd done good. And I said, I want to have a chance to win the world. And he said, that's funny you say that. Molly and I said the same thing. And anyway, that was kind of our goal,
Well, at that point in time, what horse did he have? And
He
at
had
that point in
Vegas.
time, what horse did you have?
I had two of them. I had, and like you say, through your career, you learn. I had a horse I called Superman, and you could throw first hop or you could throw 10th. I mean, Superman kept the steer right there. And then I had a horse I called Tony. And when the steer turned, Tony just dared you to throw. I mean, he was begging you to throw that sucker. And he was probably the most violent horse I ever had. And I loved him. It fit my style. But like when you put it on the horn at Austin one time, the guy says, we get to, you ride out that center gate. And we were 4-2 on this steer. He was a goodie. But when we get to the back gate, the guy says, he don't know nothing about rodeo, but he said, dude, you guys totaled that steer. And I'm like, which that's truly why I roped. I love to total them. But anyway, Tony was violent. And then you had Vegas, that horse. And I've told many people, Turtle's horse Vegas operated at about 70%. And he was so good, that was good enough. Turtle could do good at the BFI. He could do good at 75%. That horse was amazing. And then Heeling beside him, every once in a while he'd give 100. And when that sucker worked at 100%, he was like a ghost. I'd be out there riding next to the steer, and this white horse would just blow in the picture, Charlie, so fast. And he was huge. He was a big horse, but like Turtle said, he was kind of weak. So like Turtle just be hauling butt, and he'd rope them and just head out. And like I said, I'd be there waiting. And when they left the turn, we just got in such a rhythm. Truly, when they left the turn, I caught way more than I missed. And, not to me. I mean, if you can't heel for Turtle, you're in trouble. I mean, he was kind of like Charles and them guys. I mean, he was so good to follow. But we hit a rhythm. I mean, he headed him. He could throw 2 coils if he had to, but
I remember one quote that you had that stuck with me for a long time. And you said, a guy don't know what a good horse is until you've rode one. When you're talking about riding Dunny, when you're talking about riding some of those horses along your career where you kind of knew what you were looking for in a way where you've watched them, you've been on enough of them, but also there's a lot too when you're heeling where you also know the same thing when you've been behind a good horse.
Yes.
There's a lot to that when you're getting spins where the money's at consistently and when you know where they're going before they even get headed. There's something too, and that's where that head horse shines. Headers right there were hit and miss. If they had a good head horse, they won. If they didn't, and it wasn't their ability, it was what they were riding. And there's so much too in the chemistry hits when you're talking about Vegas, you're talking about Turtle and where you're at with your horses. There's a lot too, and all of a sudden the stars align right there where your run fits.
Yep. And it did, and the horsepower fit. Like you said, I had one that was short and very strong to the horn. And so like when Turtle hit him and started to leave with him, man, I'd heel him. That's as far as the steer went, and his horse really faced. And I mean, we truly just hit a stride there. I mean, we drove around, unloaded our horses, and made the same run every day. And and then Vegas got sick that fall. We were 4th in the world. He rode him at Great Falls, I think it was, one of them rodeos in northern Montana. And we won that rodeo.
That'd be about the start of August then, right?
Yeah. The 1st of August, that first week of August, we were 4th in the world. And anyway, we won that rodeo on him. And Turtle says to me, look at Vegas over there. He don't feel good. He doesn't look right to me. And I'm like, nah, we've been hauling him. He'll be all right. And that was when a disease went around. Walt Woodard's horse got it. JoJo's horse Bull got it. And it just, I mean, they dwindled down to nothing, whatever it was. And so Vegas got it. Well, Turtle left him with the vets, and he lived through the disease, but he had a chemical founder in his front feet from some of the drugs. And so he got on a little horse he called Rooster, and also the Little Bay, really, really a good horse, but would duck.
He was fast-footed.
And Turtle was so fast-handed. You know, I'd tell people when he'd rope the horns, I'd just see that bay horse disappear. But Turtle was fast-handed enough. I'd just speed my rope up because I knew he was probably going to switch, but it might be a little rougher than Vegas.
And it was fast-footed enough to finish, because when the run did come together, Turtle's one of the few guys that could stay ahead of that horse with his fast, tight swing. But that horse had fast feet to where then when it did clean up in his finish, I mean, it was done in a hurry after the head rope went off.
Yes, it was. We could run him out there farther and be faster on Rooster, than we could Vegas. You know, just he was kind of like my horse. He was a violent head horse. I mean, that sucker, when he ducked, he ducked. When he faced, he faced. It was 100%. But so anyway, got on him, and we finished the season, made the finals.
Then I said, didn't he ride? He got on Pook's horse after that, if I remembered right.
Yeah, not to the finals though. We dropped clear to 12th. And riding that horse, Turtle pulled his groin in the fall there real bad at Omac. And when he leaves at Omac, I see this horse duck, and I just hear him go, ah. And I turn around, and I don't realize how bad it is. I'm laughing. I'm like, what's he doing now? Well, geez. I mean, he just rips his groin. So we finished out the last few rodeos, and he'd put a belt, like his belt, and he'd figure eight it, and he'd buckle his legs together best he could. And geez, it was painful to watch him head steers. I mean, he's so tough. He grounded out, and we made the finals, but we dropped a little ways. Anyway, we went in 12th, and that's when he got Pook's horse. He went up to get Vegas from the vets, and he went and got Pook's horse. And I said, well, come by the barn and we'll run some practice steers and see what you think. Cause he was telling me about this horse. And he said, man, I got Vegas with me and stuff. I'd like to just keep going home. And I said, shoot, sounds good. We've roped plenty together. I'm sure when we get to the finals, we'll be fine. And so we get to the finals, we get out there, and I mean, he rode him, and we're in Vegas. And Turtle says, what do you want me to ride? And I said, man, I don't care. Whatever you think. And he said, well, I can ride Rooster, and we'll do good in the first 3 rounds. And then I'll cut a finger off and lose my rope in the 4th. And I said, yeah. And I said, what about the other one? And he said, he's easy. He said, he's not maybe not quite as electric, but he's easy. And I said, well, start on him. Hell, if you don't like him, we'll switch to Rooster. We know that horse. And so we placed or split. I can't remember. Anyway, we did really good right off the get-go. I mean, that horse of Pook's let Turtle get up over him. I mean, he had it on all of them. You could have drew a circle. That's where he headed him. And, you know, I always thought Turtle was really good about, not that he was slow, but he always was aware of the arena. He would get out there where he could face, and we could finish. And anyway, like I said, my horse was tailor-made for the NFR. I mean, he tried to make me heel like that way all summer. So when I got behind Pook's horse, and Tony was working good, and we placed in the first 4 or 5 rounds, and placed deep, and which you've been there, Charlie. The finals is like a good roping. If you go to the BFI and your first 3 or 4 steers are lopers, well, that gets easy, you know, and that's kind of how the finals went. We had good steers, and we did draw a couple dang sure challenging steers later in the rodeo, but the first 4 or 5 were good. We we made really good runs and placed deep. And so when we got to about the 8th round, you know, then people were starting to grab you in the hallway and stuff. And man, you got a chance to win the world. Do you know that? Yeah, I do. I'm 40 years old, and I've always wanted to. Yeah, I'm quite aware.
I know exactly where I'm at.
Yeah. We've climbed the ladder. Oh damn. No, I knew. And anyway, and Al Bach called me when I was out there, and Al said, "Hey, whatever you're doing's working. Don't you change nothing." And so we didn't. I mean, we just kept banging them out till about the 9th round. I mean, we drew a steer that wanted to stop. I think it was the 9th round, and we were 5 flat on him, and I kind of had to hold back and keep him going. And that was, you know, that steer was kind of we changed our plan to rope him, and then the 10th round riding in there. I mean, we knew it all. If we got a time, we won the average. And we had a little steer with little horns, and Turtle ropes him, and he holds onto his slack just an extra second to keep it on there. And so like I'm all attack, here I come, and I get in there too tight, and I'm waiting for him to move. And when he leaves, I get him by the inside leg, and I hold my slack, you know, because I know that's at least an average win. And Clay and Travis, I believe they had to be 6'2". When I roped the leg, they had to be 6'2" to win the world. And so Clay just runs him, you know, they run him down there a little ways, and the steer kind of shuffles off, and TG got a leg, and they were, I don't remember, 6'5" or 6'8" or whatever, but it's still tight enough. I mean, they take us out there, and we're standing behind our average saddles, and the whole time I'm asking Turtle, did we win it? Did they win it? Did we win it? And gosh dang, we're walking down the hallway to do some interviews, and we still don't know. And a reporter from Casper, he comes up and he reaches over me and he slaps me in the chest with a piece of paper. And I look at it, you know, and I'm like, it's just numbers and figures. And I'm like, what's this? I mean, and he goes, you did it. And I'm like, wow. It's emotional to me, because it was, like you said, I mean, 40 years of my life, and you kind of think, many times I thought, what am I doing this for? You know, the money wasn't there. It wasn't like I said, well, 2 more years and we can retire. Jenny and I'll have everything we need. So you think, what am I doing out here? You know, my boys are getting older, and anyway, 40 years old, and I won it. And you realized, hey, I didn't do this for nothing.
Because I think that's where it's so hard when you think about world titles at the end of the year. You know, for a lot of guys, that year was exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
But what people don't understand was, from that point, rewind it 39 years to that point, was extremely exhausting. You know, from 1992 when you buy your card till, you know, 2011, that's it. That's what it goes back to. I think that's when the guy looks at it and you're like, that holy, and then you look back at the miles, the bills, you know, what it does to your family, what it does to your insides, what it does to your psyche. Am I supposed to be doing this? And then all of a sudden you're like, holy crap. It's wild when you look at it that way.
Well, and just making it, you know, I've talked to guys and they're like, man, I got tears in my eyes the first grand entry. And, you know, I seen Jake Long after he won the world this year, somewhere he said, oh, I bawled like a baby. You know, he's another guy. I mean, been to the finals so many times, and, you know, and I think back of Kuntz and some of them guys that are legendary, Britt, you know, and never got to win it.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's the way I look at it. And I think the reason, Charlie, we're not seeing the domination of Jake and Clay and Speed and Rich is because people are so good and the finals is so good. You know, when year we won it, it paid $17,000 a night. So we had a little work to do, but it's still good enough that if you get out there and have one of them great finals, you're the world champ. You know, I don't care where you come in. You just got
Because you've seen it this year with Torres and
Mhm.
Colton Schmidt. You know, Torres 15th, Schmidt was right there at the bottom, 14th, 13th, something like that on the way in before round number one, missed the first one, and then just that yellow horse and that bay horse just turning on, where you're seeing them guys rope to the best of their abilities and just all the way to 10th round, and you're seeing guys come from the bottom where they're the guys.
Yeah.
Round number 10, they get this steer caught under a certain time. They are the world champs coming from the bottom. And then sure enough, they draw a little steer right there that looked like Barry Sanders trying to rope him right there. And, you know, it didn't work out. But I mean, you're seeing where they had that chance from how good the finals is, exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you make the finals nowadays, you have a chance. And, you know, like, the head horse, Torres is heel horses, and Torres has roped good there now for 2 or 3 years.
Really good.
He's got a good lick in Vegas. I mean, and all season, but I'm saying when you get there, I mean, he's right at the end of the switch. His horses are coming off. He's roping on separation, and it really, you know, he's awful good in that building, and it showed. But yeah, the rodeos are so good, or the finals is so good. Darn right. It doesn't matter where you go in, you can win it. And, you know, like the year, this is regressing, the year that Turtle and I won it, I went to the Wrangler finals with my boys, and I roped in the open, but then I stayed there 3 or 4 days. They were in some lower ropings, and I watched them, and I'd been missing out. And so I called Turtle from the Wrangler finals, and I said, hey, man, when the finals over this year, I'm done. And he said, nah, you're not. You ain't done. You ain't done. And I said, no, I serious. I said, I'm serious. I really want to be around here more. You know, these guys, not only did my boys need me, I didn't want to miss anymore. You know, Kellen still to this day teases me, well, we didn't know you till I was 13. And, but so I told him, and he goes, are you serious? And I said, yeah, I am serious. So anyway, when we got to the finals, if I remember right, he had talked maybe about roping with Jake Long. And the three of us were sitting there, and Jake Long, I can't remember who he was roping with, but Jake said, hey, man, I can't till the winter rodeos are over. So I told Turtle, I said, that's fine. But when Houston and that stuff's over, I'm not going to California. And when that's over, I'm going home. And I mean, you know, I'm being serious. I'm done. You know, it hit me like a book. Or hit me like a brick. I wanted to be done. I mean, I had loved rodeo. Like you said, for 39 years, I had loved rodeo, and I just didn't anymore. You know,
Well, you think about being able to call your own shot. You think about, okay, I'm done, and I get to be the one in charge of that. You know, rarely do you see that. You know, when you think of John Elway, how long it took that dude to win a Super Bowl, and even though he did get 2 of them, but he's the one that walked away on his own terms. Same thing with Peyton Manning, had an early victory, but then with the Broncos, had that win, and he's able to call it.
yeah.
You know, there's a lot too when a guy hits the pinnacle and you're the one that can walk away on your own terms. Man, that's pretty special. Not a lot of guys get to do that.
No, and it was, I know some people might think, well, he won the world and stepped out, and I did. But I was stepping out no matter how it went. You know, if we went in 12th and left 12th, I was still done. And we were somewhere, Paul Eves and I don't know what we were talking about, but I told Paul, I said, Paul, I can't go anymore. I would like to go home now. And he said, oh, Jetson, you'll always rodeo, baby. And I'm like, no, I won't. I'm done. And what made it nice is, however it all, why I wanted to quit. But I mean, I was empty. And then after I won the world, I roped with Jake one summer and roped with Santa Jenny a little bit, and truly enjoyed it because like Jake said, hey, we're not trying to make the finals. I mean, if it works out, we will, but I'm going to come up there and we'll go to all them rodeos. And our deal was, after Cheyenne, we'll evaluate. Well, we did good, just good enough. I mean, could have maybe made it, but we had everything go just right. And so we entered Dodge City, and Jake said, well, we're doing good enough. Let's go out there. So we went to Dodge. Didn't do any good, as I remember. And anyway, so headed home and I filled in a little bit. Synogen, he needed a partner there for a couple weeks and did a little bit of that. And then, man, I'll tell you what, well, for sure, 10 years, since 2015, I just haven't, I started picking up bucking horses for Servies, and a guy around here named John Forbes are the two guys that use me, and got to doing that, Charlie. And I just haven't roped, Carson's got the heel horses. I mean, if I did want to rope, he's got to send one home. My horses are all 15 hands and huge. So, but I just haven't roped. And like you said, I don't miss the competition. I miss my buddies. That's basically it.
Because how cool was it then after you were done, then to be able to be there with your kids, be able to be home roping, being able to pull the chute for them, watching them as they started obviously having the same passion for roping as you did.
Well, and they were at a time. I mean, they were going to succeed probably either way. I mean, they're both very determined, but for me to get home and just say, hey, here's what I know, Driggers and I are pretty tight, and he always came to the house. Turtle was always around. When I roped to Jake Barnes, Kellen got to pick his brain. So they had a good foundation, but when I was home and when they roped every day, I could keep telling them what I thought, and especially Carson, I told him what I thought about heeling and how to do it. And it probably helped. I mean, I think it helped. And just the fact that they both played basketball. I mean, I got to go to every basketball game, and now my youngest boy, Cress, he ropes. I feel sorry for him. He doesn't get to rope like the other two. Shoot, I ranch and I pick up broncs. And so when he ropes, it's because my boys are home or somebody stopped by, but Cress ropes like he's he don't miss very many. I mean, he's a real consistent header, and I sure have enjoyed being around him and like all three of them. Cress is 17 now. He's getting where he's pretty fun. He gets my humor now, and kind of adult humor, but
that takes some age.
Yeah, that takes some age. But they're my best friends, and we've all my boys have been nice to raise. I'm not saying you didn't have a moment where you might rattle their chain, but never had any.
Well, that's one thing I've seen about you and Judd and all the boys, all of them. Like, it's a friendship.
Yeah,
even Jameis
fight with them.
Yeah, it was always, every time we got to go up there and go hang out during Casper. It was such a family dynamic and unit. It was really cool and special to see, and it's I truly enjoyed those times, being able to see how you and Judd kind of parent your boys. I mean, because there's a lot to being able to be their friends, where it's not always a dictatorship. There's got to be a relationship to be able to have, and I thought you guys mastered that to the
when
team.
I grew up, and my dad wasn't, he wasn't bully, but that's what we were doing it. Hey, we're going to bring them through that gate over there. Dad, what if we use this gate? And he'd just give you that look. What did I say? Yeah, let's use your gate. You know what I mean? It was pretty.
I do know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. And so anyway, yeah, I always said, when the boys get old enough, I'll listen. And if I think my way's the way we'll go. But Cress, to this day, like the other two are gone rodeoing, Cress helps me every day. And he'll say, what if we did this? Or what if we did that? What if we moved them over there? And I think, man, that's a pretty good idea. I mean, it's an old ranch, we've been here 6 generations. We've always done it a certain way. And so when he says, what about this? I mean, it's refreshing, and I listen to him. I mean, if it's not going to work, I'll veto it, but no, they've been good. We are a tight family. Like I said, my nephews, they're good boys. They're not roping very much. Jaden started a trucking business. He's got 2 cattle trucks going now. Jaron started a trailer business, sells not well, he will, but not really living quarters like you think. And he dump trailers, flatbeds, and he has a repair business here in Casper. So, somebody during Casper's rodeo goes over there to him. gets their axle or brakes or whatever. But no, all the boys, and we are a tight family. I mean, it's been it helped me in rodeo, because I always told myself the worst thing that could happen to me, Charlie, was go home. And so when you say that, it's like, oh, nobody wants to go home. And I didn't either. But if I went broke and had to go home, I had to come home to a family ranch, to people I like, so the downside wasn't that scary. I mean, yeah, I had to pour a little concrete, build some pole barns. That was scary. But the worst thing that could happen to me rodeoing wasn't a bad deal.
Yeah, I agree, because it was romantic, man. When we get to go up there and gather some cattle or do whatever, it's a beautiful spot. I mean, it's something that we got a military branding that we have at the end of the month, and the reason why I do that, because I had put on a big military team roping at the end of the year, and the reason why we do the branding is like that was some of my most favorite memories.
Oh,
The times we'd be able to get out of the arena, being able to watch the sun come up, being on a horse, and being able to be where the phone doesn't work, where you feel anxiety and things that don't matter anymore. They leave your thoughts, and when you're able to get back to where you almost feel where God put you here for a reason.
Yeah.
How things used to be. There's something so just you can't explain it until you're there.
Yep.
And that's what I envy so much about the real, what I call cowboys. There's rodeo cowboys, but there's also cowboys. There's a huge difference, in my opinion. Those are the guys that feed the country. Those are the guys that feed the world. And what those guys do, man, is hard work. And a lot of people, I mean, there's not a lot of people too or some people too that we know of that got killed doing it. And but man, I'm telling you, it's some of the coolest parts of being a true cowboy that a guy will ever get to experience. And that ranch of yours is just beautiful.
Well, ranching's good enough. It will make you. Tyler Magnus, he was here one time, and Tyler said, "Why do you ever leave? Why would you?" But you're exactly right. Like you said, you get on a horse and you're using him for what God intended. I mean, like team roping is functionally
It's
not
a sport.
it's not what they're supposed to.
It's a sport. Yeah.
And you use a horse for this, and you do what you're supposed to do. And yeah, there's days you think, why do I go rodeo? I mean, it's powerful enough to make you rethink your favorite thing in life. And I've I'm blessed, to have it this long. My great granddad homesteaded here, and nobody's ever lived here but us. This has always been our ranch, and so it's kind of cool.
It's pretty special.
Yeah,
Pretty
really
special.
is.
Because you and your brother, last time I was there, unless you guys moved, you were just within a few, not even a mile, was it? Wasn't very far from each other.
No, and we did move. When my grandma passed away, she left me this house, and Jenny and I remodeled it, and the boys live where you stayed. My boys live at that house. But yes, well, I can see Justin's house up the canyon here, up the creek. And when I lived up there, I could have shot his house. I mean, he was right there. And then my folks it's kind of a compound. My folks are just up the road a ways. But it's I guess everybody knows what everybody else is doing. I mean, if my brother goes to town, I can see him go by. I'll call him, "Where you going?" And that's probably
now. Wasn't there a place too that maybe back in the day your parents or great grandparents went to school there? Wasn't there an old schoolhouse or something like that there on your property?
On the way
too?
to my dad's house, there's a schoolhouse, and it's got an old wooden flagpole and stuff. It's just a cabin, but that's where my great granddad went to school, and then they started the school right across my meadow. I can see it. That's where Justin and I went to school. That's why I say there was only 5 of us, and they went to 7th grade. So at 7th grade, you had to go to town. And first day I went to town, I had my hair greased back and styled stupid, had high top boots with my pants tucked in my boots. And I cruised into junior high in town, and I looked at the other kids and I thought, hey, I'm different. There's something different here. And anyway, they all had shoes, tennis shoes, and geez, I'm in high top boots with them tucked in my jeans. And yeah, it was a shocker. But
that's funny.
I think every kid should get to experience it. I mean, a little
I agree.
country school and stuff.
It's healthy.
It's
It is health. It's a healthy lifestyle. Something about being outside, man, seeing the sun, being around nature, and getting dirt on your hands, and it's natural. It really is. It's sad that there's some guys that never leave concrete, living in cities that never get to experience it. They're trying to medicate what you guys get to do naturally, and it's
right.
a different world. It's a different world.
This is good for your soul.
100%.
Hi, I'm Trevor Brazil.
My name's Corey Kuntz.
Hi, I'm Gino Nogueira.
I'm Luke Brown.
Hi, I'm Tyler Wade.
I'm Caleb Driggers.
Miles Baker.
Wesley Thorpe. Paul Eves. Patrick Smith. We ask so much out of our horses that recovery is crucial, and that's why I use Equinety.
I've been doing this a long time. What I have in common with these ropers is we all trust Equinety.
I feed Equinety because I want to give my horses any edge.
My horse.
My horse.
My horse.
My horse. All my horses have the Equinety edge.
And we'll talk a little bit about here. We'll kind of conclude it, but a little bit of, what you rodeoed and what you experienced and where do you see where it's at now? Because, when you see New Orleans, I mean, damn, that rodeo looked fun. And I don't know what they're doing. I don't know if the math is working on how they're promoting that to where I think T-Wade said he walked out of there with 38,000. I forget. I forget who else walked away with 36,000, in the team. I mean, you talking about rodeos like that it's not an entry fee based rodeo. It's money. And I don't know whether they're using the concerts or whether someone's funding it that needs to lose a lot of money. I don't know. But, you think about where you're seeing it now, especially in New Orleans, a place none of us had seen before. How cool is the new venues that you're seeing? But then talk about where you think it's going and what it's looking like for the future rodeo.
Well, I think rodeo used to, and this is, just my thought on history of rodeo, but I think rodeo used to be for the cowboys. They wanted to make a competition to see who was the best cowboy. And now it's transitioned over to, there's a lot of money in rodeo. And so I think these deals like this, people are, and with Yellowstone, the movie, for instance, it's kind of cool to be a cowboy right now. And I think these towns are looking at it and saying, hey, we can seat 10,000 people in this deal. We can hook them $50 a pop, plus the food, drinks, and everything. And so they're not necessarily having PRCA rodeos. They're just having a rodeo, and they're making money. I don't believe for a minute the committees, the town, whoever, are not making a profit. And so they're doing it for themselves, but it's good for the cowboys. I mean, that rodeo doesn't help your standings, but you go over there and win 36 grand, it sure helps your account. And I think that's where rodeo's at right now. The committees, the towns, they're making money on rodeo. And I've got my own opinion. This will get some controversy. When they say rodeo's getting better, and it is, but it's better for the top 10 guys in the world. They had a successful year. They truly made money. How did the 26th guy do? And the best guys should be rewarded. I mean, I think rodeo has always been or team roping has always been kind of offset. The year I won the world, I don't remember how much we won, but there's probably low numbered guys are like, oh yeah, I missed the other day for that much. That the rodeo or
in Vegas at the World Series finale. Yeah, they missed for that.
Team roping it's kind of offset. The best guys aren't necessarily the highest paid, but anyway, back to what I'm saying. I think I used Pendleton. Pendleton takes however many teams they want. Day money pays $7 grand. They add, I don't know, between 400,000 and 500,000 an event, and or 500,000 total, I believe, whatever it is. Yeah. But you take a rodeo like San Antonio, it adds if I remember right, but it adds $1 million plus, $1.8 million, I believe, but I don't know that. Anyway, what if you took all them teams like Pendleton does? If the day money at Pendleton's $7 grand, the day money at San Antonio would be what, 15, 18, 17,000. I mean, it should be 21 if it's 3 times the added money, but it wouldn't be. But I'm just saying, if you could win a day money and win $18,000, say, and then you roll it on down, what would 15th in the round win? You know, now you're floating some money a little deeper. I don't think rodeo's paying better. The NFR is obviously amazing, but just like you talk about that Hondo, it's just an invite rodeo, and I worry about the sport. Who's going to take over the torch? Who in 20 years is what I'm saying. Are these young guys going to want to do it? It's so expensive. And if you don't get invited to some of these rodeos, if you don't qualify to some of these rodeos, what's the incentive? Them putting these qualifications on, and they just did it at Cheyenne. So, and living here in Casper, it's been a big deal. What's going on? And, but I will say, when you kick people out of the sport, you lost all your, if they try and shut down rodeo, what's everybody going to come to bat for? I mean, you want me to?
Well, I think you bring up a really good perspective, because when I've been hearing, and I haven't looked at the sports news, I just heard guys talking about it. A lot of guys are not going to California right now. Reason, the fall's so good, or excuse me, the springtime's so good.
Mm-hmm.
The rodeos you're seeing now in June before Reno, it's wild. Yeah, I forget how much Nashville's adding. Corpus Christi's back. It's adding a bunch of money down there. So a lot of guys ain't going out there traditionally like we used to, because now I've heard Sisters adding like 30,000 the team roping. I heard, Eagle, Idaho's adding a bunch of money. Union, Oregon's adding money. Livermore's adding more money, like 20,000 or something. Then I've been hearing other little rodeos around there before Reno starts, before Napa starts, that is like, holy smokes, where Klamath Falls adding 10 grand in the team roping. Things that are like where you're seeing rodeo and you're seeing committees stepping up, adding more money. You're like, man alive. And now I see why guys are not going to some of them other rodeos, because it's so good throughout the year now. But talk a little bit about Cheyenne, because now you're seeing basically like the history of Pendleton that would take anyone, that their day monies were so good because there was, you talk about $400, $500 fees at Cheyenne, 150 team ropers. There's a lot of money in the pot. Now, I don't know where they subtracted it to now. Is it 30? I forgot the number they're taking this year.
I truly haven't heard what the cut is, how many they'll take or anything.
But now they're limited to, that's like San Antonio, like Houston, they're limiting the entries. And so talk a little bit about of what, I don't know, maybe some of the rodeos now trying to add more money so that they don't have to have as many contestants. Maybe there's the parking that is a cluster in these places that they're at. So there's a give and take on both sides, whether it's, money added, contestants, parking, all that stuff, but then also trying to get it to where it's moving forward for the industry as well, where you try not to lose your tradition, but you're also trying to update it. So it feels like, between a balance of that, where do you think Cheyenne is in this?
Well, I think Cheyenne's and that's, I haven't talked to Tom or anything, but I think I do know this. When Cheyenne started, they never dreamed that the trailers would be 50 feet plus a little semi, so the parking's an issue. Where do we put these people? The price of cattle, since I started working for Surveys and picking up and behind the scenes a little more.
Yeah, you're getting to be behind the curtain now.
Yes, and everybody should have to work one rodeo like that. There's so much goes into it. The judges, the drawing, the secretaries, us sorting horses and cattle, and there's a lot into producing a rodeo that I never thought about when I was just roping. I'd run my steer and complain about him, and I drove out. And it's, there's so much to it, and everybody should do it. But I know with the parking, trying to find this amount of cattle, and it is a balance. The ultimate deal is if these committees don't make money, why are they doing it? If the town and the committee's not going to put some money in the bank, then why do it? But I think like the Hondo and or whatever they called that rodeo, I think these rodeos are proven that it is making money, so, and I don't have the answer. What would be the balance? Have an offsite parking if you could find one, and shuttle guys over. I mean, I really don't know, but I hate to see the limits. I went to a meeting with Sherwood one time, and I just rode along. But anyway, I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I raised, and I said, hey, instead of doing it like you're doing, what if you made it $10,000 to fill your permit? And if it took you a week or took you 10 years, whatever, but as soon as you got your card, you could enter. And you have to win 10,000 to maintain your card, or you're back on your permit. Because I've never understood how you can have an association and say, we're all card members. You proved yourself, but and you got to win 1,500 or 1,000 now. Well, my goodness, you win 8th place at Rapid City, you're a full member. But what they've done is they're like, we'll take you, but not you. Just because last year wasn't great, now you're at ground zero. I think make it harder to be a member, but once you're a member, you can go. And I don't care if they made it 20,000, 5,000, whatever, but make it a little harder. And then you have to win so much to maintain your card status. But when you was mentioning all them rodeos too, Charlie, when you'd come home to get your circuit count in, how many rodeos would you go to that added 500? 1,000. That was like, geez, this is a pretty good circuit rodeo. And now I don't even know if they have them. I mean, is there a rodeo that adds just 1,000? I mean,
Yeah, it's
that one.
when I heard that, I was like, holy smokes, they're not lying. That these little town rodeos are adding money that you're like, I don't even know that town makes that much in a year.
Well, St. Paul's always
Wow.
amazed me. You get
100%.
in there and you're like, this is St. Paul. This is the whole town.
Mhm.
And you're talking about sisters, or that one in Corpus is going to add 50 grand. And I didn't know about Nashville, but yeah, and the boys kind of keep me in the loop. I mean, I know, but the rodeos are so good. If you decide to skip Nashville or one of them, there's another one, and used to be.
Well,
if
I think where it
grand,
helps now, because you remember trades. How hard it was to get a trade at one of them rodeos you needed to go to, where now it kind of almost eases the sting of, yeah, I got popped over there at, Union during
right.
Sisters. Well, there's another one of them down the road and my card starts hitting.
Right.
So it's almost like there's enough good rodeos throughout the year that when your card hits and when it don't, kind of evens out a little bit because before, I think that's why the dummy cards at one point in time got so crucial. And then also you hear about, guys paying for trades, but because, man, if I don't get to this rodeo, this could make or break. Where now there's a lot more of them. It's almost like they're taking a little bit of the scarcity mentality away a little bit, to where when you and I were there, where, man, if we don't get to San Juan Capistrano, or these ones, because they're rare. Now there's a lot more of those. And we always said that, man, what would happen if there was 10 San Juan Capistranos? I remember we all said that back in the day, and now you're starting to see it.
Yeah, San Juan was the first rodeo you ever went to that treated you like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you got there and all of a sudden you're a rodeo star. And
Yeah.
and it's the rodeos nowadays. Colin and I have visited about it. If you want to win 4th or better, you better bring your A game. But if you win 8th, he told me he placed at a couple rodeos and not won a little bit. He won $1,200 2 or 3 times the last year he rodeoed with a leg. And it's like, nobody even knows you're there and you won 1,200. And years ago, if you won 1,200, you're like, whew, awesome. And
back in the day, that was a day money.
that's winning first. But I do think that rodeo's gotten, and it has gotten better. Don't get me wrong. Like you said, you name off them rodeos. Geez, those were rodeos you didn't miss. You couldn't skip San Juan. It's like, you're not going. You qualified for San Juan and you're not going. You'd have been an idiot. And now they can.
Yeah. Well, Jess, I appreciate it, man. This was fun. It was totally fun, man. How much I admired how, long it was that you got out there. When you said at 35, the amount of people that called, and told you how proud they were of you, I mean, everyone was, and we all were because of, how long you stayed after there, and we was all so tickled. And, I know your whole family was, and just the humor, and stuff that you guys had, man, at the rodeos, man, you guys helped rodeo and not only be fun, but also there's a lot of times where guys were, man, just wanted to talk themselves off a ledge and just be able to go have a beer and be able to laugh. You guys were those guys, and man, it was a fun time. And it's what I enjoy also about the podcast is those stories don't die.
Right.
In order to hear those stories back then, you had to have been there, or you had to have been in the loop to hear them. And now it's fun to be able to talk about just that crazy stuff that Turtle and Cheese and Britt and so many guys did. That those are stories that Guy easily could have forgotten about. That's fun to be able to bring up and talk about how fun rodeo was back in the day.
Oh, and you used to, like, the Brock Cresta was maybe yesterday was his jackpot, his memorial, but he was one, and geez, I'll let you go. I could ramble all day, but anyway, Cresta did not like missing. I mean, he was not happy, and he'd throw a terrible loop once in a while or something, and he'd be mad. I mean, genuinely was not happy, and I'd ride up to him and just sit there for a minute till he finally looked at me. And I'd usually go, hold my thumb up. Hey, good shot. And I mean, he wanted to be mad, but he couldn't. And, those deals like that, you just made friends.
I remember one time you dusted one, if I remembered right, and you came back and looked at somebody and goes, can't believe I slipped that one.
Yeah. Probably hit him in the front feet and
Slipped him.
Yeah. Well, I asked Turtle one time, he was roping with somebody, and I said, how'd you guys do over there? And he said, oh, we had him by both feet and lost him, thank God. And I said, thank God. And he said, yeah, he had my horse. It was so fun. And rodeo cowboys are a special group because they're gypsies. I mean,
100%.
it's not like a guy that gets up and goes to the office and has to be a certain way. I mean, in the arena, you got to be a professional, but these guys are living out of their trailers, and you're stopping at a town where it's that town celebration. It's that town's favorite time of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And you stop, and then when it's over, you go to the next town. It's their favorite time of the year. And it was a good time. It was the best time of my life.
I remember one of the funny one-liners you had one time when we were doing a school somewhere, and I run up there, and we were going to rope together and kind of show everyone what we're talking about. And I run up there, and right about the time I went to throw, that steer peels off over there to the right, and I run back over there, rope him, turn him off, and you come in there and heel him. And under your breath, as I was riding by, you said, I'd appreciate it if you quit overhazing the steer right there. You're making my position. You're screwing my position up going down the pin.
Yeah, just leave them straight,
I can't
Charlie.
tell you how many of those one-liners that you and Turtle and all those guys would have at the time, and you're like, I didn't even see it that way.
Oh,
you can come up with stuff.
I was doing a school with Doyle one time, and the header, he's running down there, and the heeler picks up his rope, great big loop, and knocks the head loop down. And I hollered, I said, headers, be careful how big your loop is. And Doyle looked at me like, would you shut up? I'll tell you a funny one, and I'll let you go. But when I
I can be here all day.
When I think about Doyle, the first real big roping school I did was with him in Florida. And so we're driving down there. We get in the car, and Doyle said, in the opening, I'll open the school and talk to him, and then I'll say, here's Jhett Johnson, and what will you say? And I said, oh, I don't know. I'll come up with something. And Doyle was the best. I mean, watching him, he was professional, and you know how his voice is. He was real smooth. And so I said, oh, I'll think of something, Doyle. And he said, no, what will you say? And I said, well, I'll say, hey, I want to thank you guys for coming. And no, Jetson, why don't you just say, if you're going to say thank you, why don't you just say, hey, we're making good money off you. We're glad you came. We welcome them. I said, oh, okay, yeah. I said, so I said, hey, I want to welcome everybody to the school. Jhett Johnson, I'll be teaching the heeling. And I said, it costs a lot of money to rope. So if you guys can pick up a couple things out of the deal that helps you win down the road, it's worth it. Doyle and I are going to get around to every one of you after every run. So don't nod and run everybody over. I want this school to be safe. We'll take our time. We got all day. Doyle said, that sounds good. That sounds real good. So we get stood out there. And I mean, it's a big school. Doyle does his part, and he's crosses his arms. Jhett Johnson say a little bit. Well, 35 students just whoop, look at me, and I freeze a little. And I said, hey guys, I want to welcome everyone. And hey, team roping's expensive nowadays, so everybody be safe. And that's all I said. I'm locked up, and I can see him. He's got his arms crossed, and when I said that, he just goes and looks at me like, so I don't want to look at him. Well, we go saddle our horses. I'm cinching my horse, and he comes right up next to me, and he says, team roping's expensive, so be safe. Jesus Christ. and, there was just stuff like that all the time. Doing them schools with him, we had a good time.
Well, go ahead and get all your licks in on all your healers while you can, because once I finish out the healing side, I'm working on getting start with Gerald Camarillo and gonna work my way all through the head and side. So this way you get a chance to get them jabs in first when we get Doyle on.
Right.
Internal.
Oh, yeah. He'll have plenty. Yeah, and Turtle will have something to say. And I got to know Gerald. He called me. I got to know Leo after some time, and he was, he'd humbled and stuff, and I really liked him. I mean, I've heard the war stories about what a competitor he was, and I know it's true. It's not that, but he'd mellowed a little, and I really enjoyed Leo. And then I got to know Gerald, and Gerald, when he was at the college finals last year, he called, and he was going to come out, and the kid he was watching didn't do good, so he left early. But geez, them guys, like you said, how awesome would it have been to have Leo on? I mean, you couldn't have watched it enough to find out how he got to thinking what he thought about healing.
Yeah, and how he pretty much started this whole this whole era where he was the start, of what that guy was able to do, and then that's when you started seeing guys that's getting better and better and better, and basically studying it and evolving it. It was wild.
Yes, because all the guys I looked up to talk about Leo. Yeah, Walt and Allen and Clay and all them guys. I mean, when I watch their podcasts, that's the guys that God I want, and Richie. I want to be them guys, and they all talk about Leo. So it's like, and like I said, when I got to know him, Turtle and I stayed at HP's, and one of the last times I seen him, he'd went to an old timers rodeo, him and Sherrick, and he's leading his horse in. And I said, hey, Lion, Jhett. I said, how'd you do? Won it. And he just kept leading his horse. You know what I mean? He was, I don't know. I know we're supposed to be humble, but and Leo was always real nice to me, but just that, how'd you do? I won it. What do you think I did?
Yeah, I love that era, man, because those guys were tough about it. And like I said, it's great. It's great that everyone now, there's not as much scarcity mentality. There's more money now to win, and everyone, like Walt said, everyone now's nice. Everyone's just really nice, and I think that's good. It's fun to be able to have competition, but back then it was still kind of cool when you see guys who are gladiators,
when I first showed up, Charlie, the first year I rodeoed, and that's when all them guys were still in their heyday. Your friends, the Moore brothers and Schwank and, them guys, they would say, good job. Hey, good job today. The guys that you wanted to say something didn't say a word. I mean, if you thought they were going to go, geez, kid, that's amazing what you did right there. They didn't even pretend they knew you. And it would keep you, it kind of kept you in check.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, a lot of guys learn to drive off that. you know, and I think that was that era, you know, of you keep yourself down, you know, you beat that competition down enough. Well, then if they keep coming, they keep coming, they keep coming, and all of a sudden you're at eye level with them. There's some respect,
Well,
you know, but until then you almost had to earn it, seemed like.
and maybe it's an age thing, because the boys are like, "You're hard, Dad. You're so hard." And but I will say this: I mean, I watch amazing runs on TV, and people will say, "Did you see that run?" I mean, them guys were 3.6, and I think, "Yeah, I seen it." But when you get up every day and you rope on nothing but good horses, perfecting your craft, when you go 3.6, I mean, can you believe it? Yeah, I believe it. They should have. I mean, that's all they do. It'd be like you driving out here and watching me flake hay to cows and go, he never missed a string. He flaked them just right. Well, yeah, that's what I do. You know what I mean? Nobody's gonna write a song about that. And that's how I feel about roping. I mean, if you're 3.6, you should be.
He fed every horse. Can you believe
Yeah, he
it?
fed every horse. He didn't skip
Does it every day.
Yeah, that's what I do.
Gosh dang, I'll finish with this one, but man, I went to the BFI the other day and it was so funny. I seen Driggers over there and sitting by JD McGuire, and I walked by and I just got done watching a rerun of them on the Cowboy Channel when I was getting my stalls there, and they had the Cowboy Channel on. It was from the day before, and him and Junior go 3-2 over there. And just the yellow horse he's riding right now looks just in them indoor buildings looks just so good. And whatever horse Junior, that sorrel, and I mean, it just everything just looked so tight. But it was legal. I mean, that was an obvious head catch, Destier hits, like it was 3-2. And I seen him probably 10 minutes after I watched that run on Cowboy Channel. Walked by and said, "Good work over there, Driggs, over there at Austin, man. 3-2. That was a good run." And JD McGuire goes, "Yeah, good run for second."
Well, that's, you know, I shouldn't be hard on him, because when I was truly, this will date me. I remember Denton Payne and Richie going 5-2 at Casper. My mom's videoing it with one of them deals you hold on your shoulder. And I mean, the other cowboys, everybody's cheering. 5-2, it was like, shut the door. And it did. That won the round. And I mean, at Casper now, it's 1 and a short. 4-7 will be the cutoff. I mean, 5-2, they'd have been like, what are you training your horse? I mean,
freeing up for Sheridan.
Freeing him up like Buck Campbell used to say, "Hey, why don't you throw fast on this horse and free him up for me?"
Oh my gosh, my goal is to get him on. I want him on more than anything. Like, he's probably my top one, because that time when he got cut and by Mike Fuller, and he was going to row with Mo Watkins, and Bud goes, "Oh, bitching, why is here when you haven't jumped a good horse and heel a few and free him up for me?"
You weren't going to get him down.
No, no.
And Buck was
the one-liners he had, man, when he told the Swamper, and the Swamper goes, "Yeah, I'm going to do something different." He goes, "Oh, perfect. What are you going to do? Get one around the horns and handle one?"
Yeah, you weren't going to get him down.
No, your guys is between you two. You guys' comebacks were some of the best I've ever seen, man. It was phenomenal. Well, Jensen, I appreciate you, buddy.
I do too, Charlie. It's fun to get to reminisce, and if somebody don't ask you questions, there's a lot of stuff you forget. You know, if somebody said, "Just tell me a story," it's like, what story? But
where do we start?
Where do we start? There's a lot of stories.
I love it.
No, I appreciate reaching out, and you know, I appreciate everybody that helped me through the whole time. It's, you know, like I said, there was a lot of support through my deal, because I was out there a while.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thanks a bunch, Cowboy.
You too. Thank